Okay, this one is truly one of the most amazing interviews I've ever done on so many different levels. I really think this is one of those introductions where there's so much to say about this conversation that it could easily exceed the length of the interview itself if I were to dissect all of the different legally, economically, historically, toxicologically, pharmacologically interesting dimensions of this story. I mean, I think you could actually teach an organic chemistry class through this conversation alone in terms of understanding all of the different things that are being discussed. Markovnikov's rule, Zaitsev's rule, electrophilic addition reactions, E1 reactions, SN2 reactions, it's all here. But before getting into that, let me just give a tiny bit of background. So I'm in an amazing position where when I was younger, I was fascinated by clandestine synthesis, and I always felt that the only people that ever got to talk to clandestine chemists were forensic scientists working with law enforcement. And how on earth would you ever get to talk to somebody who lived their life making drugs? How do you hear that side of the story? And over the years, I got to this place where I was able to talk to people, and eventually people started coming to me to tell their stories. And this is one of the more extraordinary versions of that. Some interviews require incredible amounts of work to obtain, but this was not one of those interviews. In fact, this could not have possibly been easier. This chemist reached out to me and he said, I like listening to your interviews, but there's a whole criminal side of the world of clandestine synthesis that you never talk about. And I'd like to talk about it. He says, I'll come to New York and we'll have this conversation in person. I'd prefer to do it in person. I say, that's fine. I'll cover your plane ticket. He says, I don't want any money to do this. I just want to have this conversation. He may have been concerned that I wouldn't believe the story because it was so extraordinary. So he took a very interesting measure and filed a Freedom of Information Act request on himself to obtain all of the documentation regarding his arrest. And when we met, he came holding a 300-page stack of papers with newspaper clippings of his arrest, a VHS tape of news reports of his arrest, photos of the equipment used in his lab, and more documentation that everything he describes in this conversation is real than I have ever had for any interview in the past. So I know sometimes I do these interviews and people will say, I don't know if I believe this guy. And that's good. It's good to be skeptical. It's good to regard everything that you hear with suspicion. But let me just say this. There is an enormous amount of evidence to corroborate every single thing that he says in this interview. I have digitized the 300 pages of documentation, but I'm leaning toward not releasing them. And the main reason is that there's a lot of names in it that I will have to manually redact. I think Adobe Acrobat has an auto redacting feature, but some of it's handwritten. And the last thing I want to do is cause this person any problems because he showed an enormous amount of trust in having this conversation with me. And the names have been changed in the conversation. And I just really don't want to cause him any problems. He did go to prison for what he is describing in this interview. But as you will find, the circumstances of his arrest were very unusual. They were unlike any other arrest circumstances I have ever heard about. In fact, he turned himself in because the circumstances of his chemistry had become so dangerous and so frightening that he felt going to prison was a safer alternative than continuing underground synthesis. I'll probably upload some of this. I'm going to take the news reports, which I've also digitized, and alter them slightly so that the name is removed. And it's not actually that he doesn't want his name known. He's okay with that, but I'm just not going to use it. So I'm really doing this because he showed me a lot of trust, and I'm trying to protect him. And I will go through them again and maybe pull out some of the analytical stuff that is really just like the percentage safrole in his sassafras oil, things like that, which is interesting, but it's nothing revelatory. And we get into this in the conversation, but this is a really interesting confrontation with my own biases in discussing these stories. And my bias is to tell positive stories that emphasize the good intentions and the scientifically interesting dimensions of underground chemistry. I feel that there is a stereotype that has been perpetuated by journalists and law enforcement and even shows like Breaking Bad that anyone involved in underground chemistry is going to be enslaved by the cartel and forced at gunpoint to do drug synthesis, or everyone is going to be in it for the money, and there's going to be a lot of violence and criminality, when so often the stories are closer to someone like Steve Gill, where, you know, they're idealistic, nerdy hippie types who, for whatever reasons, end up working outside of academia and really just want to make psychedelics or other drugs because they find it interesting. So that's my bias in telling those kinds of stories. My effort to counter the typical stereotype in how people think about clandestine drug manufacturing. But like any stereotype, it's sometimes true. People are enslaved. It's sometimes true that there is violence. And it's sometimes true that people have very bad intentions in what they are doing. And this is a story that involves threats of murder in multiple directions and many other sorts of extremely undesirable situations. That said, one thing I really love about this conversation is, despite the darkness, and there is extreme darkness, it's a 2.5 hour talk, and it just gets darker as it goes on. So if you're half an hour into it and you're thinking, this isn't so bad, it gets very dark. But despite all of that, this is still someone who recognizes the beauty of chemistry, who understands that the drugs that he was making in and of themselves were good and there was nothing wrong with the drugs. And so I think there's a lot of valuable lessons to be learned. And the major one is how things can get very, very sticky as soon as money is involved. So anyway, that's one aspect of this, is the examination of the criminal trade surrounding this chemistry. But the other reason that this conversation is utterly fascinating to me is that the chemistry itself is so interesting. First of all, this kind of SN2 reaction with ammonia and what people refer to as bromosafrole. It's not a great name for it because it isn't really bromosafrole. It doesn't contain the double bond like safrole. But it's easier to say 2-bromosafrole than to say 5,2-bromopropyl 2H13 benzodioxole, right? It's just, it's a mouthful. But his basic route is you react safrole with HBr. The HBr adds to the double bond. You get 2-bromosafrole, and then you do an SN2 reaction with the 2-bromosafrole and ammonia. This can't just be done the way it could be done with an alkylamine. The ammonia and the bromosafrole have to be reacted in a heated pressure vessel. So this is extremely dangerous, frightening chemistry. If someone were asking me to make MDA, this certainly wouldn't be my first choice. But it's still a really interesting route that has very high atom economy. It's very cheap. There's a lot of reasons that I understand why he would have wanted to do it this way. It also contains fewer synthetic steps, unlike many of the safrole-based routes that first require isomerization to isosafrole. This, you just distill the sassafras oil, you can use the safrole. And all these stories are so interesting because when you really start thinking about, well, what's going on here? There's often some really interesting chemistry mystery, often ones where the answers are not precisely known. For example, why is it that the bromosafrole is purple? Is it because HBr is hydrolyzing the methylene dioxy bridge and producing the bromopropyl catechol? Is it producing an orthoquinone? Is this related to the purple MDMA that was circulating somewhat recently? Why does the color change back? Why, during an E1 reaction, would there have been this explosion, right? I've seen other descriptions of explosive dehydrobrominations. What's going on? Why is this so energetic? Could it be that the dehydrobromination is not only exothermic, but that it is spontaneously yielding a gas that will rapidly increase the pressure of the system at a rate that outpaces the vacuum? And could one do a back-of-the-envelope calculation using the ideal gas law to figure out exactly how enormous that increase in pressure might be? Look into it. When he describes the superdope that is produced from reducing a mixture of ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, why might it be more potent, right? Assuming, just to give a hint at what I think is going on, is that you're probably getting enantioenriched S-methamphetamine that's probably somewhat similar to the proprietary mixture of enantiomers in Adderall, right? Because if you do methamphetamine from P2P, you get racemic material, 50% R, 50% S. If you start with pseudoephedrine from nasal decongestants, you get completely 100% S-methamphetamine. But if you mix ephedrine tablets with pseudoephedrine tablets, hypothetically, you might get something like 75% S, 25% R. Again, these are just some back-of-the-envelope ideas trying to explain. The reality is, who knows exactly what was going on, but these are very fun and interesting things to speculate about. So, yeah, I guess I could just ramble on about this, but I just want to say this is really the sort of thing that I'm so grateful for, because as amazing as it is to interview someone like William Leonard Picard, and it is, and it was great, and I look forward to releasing that, there's something about this that is almost in a certain way more rewarding. Because with William Leonard Picard, you have 50 people scratching at his door trying to make a documentary about him, maybe hundreds of people. With this person, I don't think this story would have ever been told by anyone. This is a story that would have come and gone without leaving a trace. It would have been some dusty files in a cabinet somewhere in Texas that people would have completely forgotten about. But wow, is there a lot here. So I hope you find this story as rich and provocative as I did. It warrants a couple listens, and there's a small kind of rumbling sound that I think is from his finger brushing the foam microphone cover periodically. I hope it is not too disturbing to people, but otherwise, I think the sound is pretty good on this one as well. So enjoy this conversation, and I will have the Gil video as well as the Q&A as well as so much more coming out very soon. Soren bought some ketamine from a dealer.
This is some crazy shit. You f***ing muppet. This ketamine's spiritual, if you know what I mean.
Not knowing what that meant, Soren decided it would be prudent to send the sample off for analysis by Kaikion Analytics. He goes to kaikionanalytics.com and sees that their list of analyzed research chemical samples from vendors around the world shows a dizzying array of different compounds with different degrees of purity. Recognizing the danger of consuming an analytically uncharacterized chemical, Soren pays $20 for their simple qualitative analysis, puts the sample in a bag, seals the bag in an envelope, puts 3 stamps on the envelope, addresses it to Kaikion Analytics in Spain, and sends it off. 7 days after receiving the sample, Soren received his results, and now, thanks to Kaikion, he's able to proceed, illuminated by the understanding that chemical analysis affords. And you can do the same. go to kikeonanalytics.com.
Lawmen are calling it a huge drug bust just south of San Antonio, a lab capable of making nearly $1 million worth of ecstasy. Acting on a tip, members of the SAPD Drug Task Force and DPS narcotics investigators swooped down on the drug lab in Frio County and found enough material to manufacture 300,000 tablets of ecstasy. 25-year-old was arrested and is now facing multiple drug possession and manufacturing charges. He's in the Frio County jail under $1 million bond.
Okay, cool. So I think it would be easiest to just go through this chronologically, if that works for you. I mean,
sure.
That tends to be
what makes most sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be hard to go backwards.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we should just start at your childhood, how you grew up, where you grew up, how you got into this sort of
fair enough.
work.
I would say I had a fairly normal childhood until I was about 12. My father was a submarine commander in the Navy, and my mother was a semi-professional athlete.
What kind of athlete?
Tennis player.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
She won the Houston Open 1976.
Nice.
Yeah, 18 months after giving birth to me, which is odd.
Wow.
You know what I mean? That's just the fact that she gave birth to me and then 18 months later won the Houston Open was pretty incredible.
I guess it makes women strong to carry
Apparently
a child.
so.
Yeah.
But like I said, before 12 was probably picture perfect life, picturesque, And then I had a brother that passed away when I was about 10 in childbirth. He died in about 6 weeks old, and it really affected my mother. And it took a few years to manifest, but after about 12 years old, my mother went mentally ill because of the loss of her son.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when my life changed dramatically because of that. My mother spent most of from when I was 12 to almost 19 years old in a mental institution, in and out.
What was going on with her?
She technically has been diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, but I don't quite buy it because I've never seen a seizure. I've never seen it. I think my mom was addicted to drugs and was very intelligent. She used to have the Merck manual, not the Merck index, but the Merck manual. And any drug she wanted, those would be earmarked on the disease she wanted that week. And so I figured she just was doctor shop and was, Xanax and Black Mollies and back and forth, back and forth.
What decade is this?
See, I was 12, so it would be 86.
Oh, 86, okay.
86?
Yeah.
I was in 1974. So, about 86 is when it started anyway. But yeah, she was in and out pretty much from when I was 12 till a young adult. Mm-hmm. And then my dad passed away at 19. But the fact that she was in and out of the mental institution and I pretty much ran the house. I was in charge of everything. I have an older brother who's autistic. Mm-hmm. And so basically I'm the oldest by default, kind of, as you could call it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of ran the roost, but in a way it kind of made me independent, but at the same time, I kind of did what I wanted. You know what I mean? I had nobody tell me different. So basically at that point, my life kind of took a left turn. Let's just say that. But I think that's kind of at the same time I started getting an interest in books, and it didn't start out with chemistry books. It started off with this particular catalog I ordered out of the back of High Times magazine called Lupantics Unlimited. I remember getting the catalog, and the catalog had everything in it from the Anarchist Cookbook to books about identities and picking locks and drugs and any gambit of information, just oddball stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember ordering my first book, which ended up being like a pamphlet in the end. I thought it was going to be a book, comes in, it was like a little pamphlet. I don't even remember what it was. It was probably something about picking locks or something. And, it was really stupid, to be honest with you, because looking at the book, I remember it was like probably 15, 20 pages long. I probably paid $8 for it or something. And, but I remember in that catalog, they had drug books. And as I got older, I started to have an interest in marijuana. I used to smoke a lot of pot and LSD. I used to do a lot of acid. And I think that kind of made my interest in how it worked, how the acid worked, and took an interest in the chemistry. And so I started ordering some of the other books about drugs. I think one was recreational drugs. There was a bunch in there. There really was. Obviously, methamphetamine manufacturer, Uncle Fester. You know, he had several editions. I did the Anarchist Cookbook, tried to do banana peels, did not work.
Huh.
I did all that stuff. I even ordered a book about explosives. And by the way, some of it does work. Some of it does work. It taught me how to make crude gunpowder out of sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal. As a kid, I used to be that guy and used to make that stuff from the stuff at the pharmacy. You could go get it. You could get all the parts to it at the pharmacy back in the 80s.
It's so weird because I was also extremely into lock picking when I was younger, like the overlap between these seemingly unrelated things, lock picking, explosives, and making psychoactive drugs.
I think it's the deviant factor. I call it. See, in fact, I wrote some stuff down. I call it the James Bond shit. That's what I call it because there's a lot of stuff that I've done in my life that I consider in that category. The lock picking thing is funny because I actually ordered some lock picks over time. I got some, and I even had a tubular lock picking. I never was able to pick shit. I never was able to get the picks to work.
Really?
To pick locks. I could not, because, you know, a 5 tumbler versus a 3 tumbler. I mean, yeah, I could probably do a two tumbler, but that's fairly easy, you know? But I mean, a real lock, like a door.
I never tried any of this cylindrical, tubular vending machine type locks. I always
it didn't
to.
work at all.
But I was definitely able to pick padlocks and some door locks. I mean, most padlocks are barely even locks.
Right. I don't think I tried a padlock. Maybe I should have started there.
Yeah.
I think I went straight to the locks and wasn't able to do it, got frustrated and stopped.
Yeah.
I think is what happened with that. But yeah, it is interesting that the categories of stuff in that catalog. It's funny, I remember the name of it and how I got it out of the back of High Times. That's literally how I got it. High Times magazine. They had a little ad in the back and said order catalog or whatever, free catalog. And of course I got it. And this is back in the day when you had to call a 1-800 number. There was no internet.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I got that. But the book collection actually, that's where it started. And I think as I got older into high school and I actually started selling acid, my proceeds didn't go to fancy clothes or I bought more books. I just got addicted to buying books. And I'll be completely honest with you. A lot of the reference books I ended up buying, which I'll tell you later what happened to them, which is interesting. I didn't even understand a good portion of them. Like I didn't, I just wanted them.
Right.
I just wanted the books. And then, like, a lot of times I would just lay the books out and jump from one to the other and see how they kind of relate to each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These, you know, sometimes chemically similar, some not at all, or some of them just sound similar. You know, it's just, that's how it would start. I would just kind of jump around and look at, you know, different, angles of them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's, again, same deal. The book obsession is another extremely common thing. I'm the same way. All my books are at the other place that I'm moving from, but it becomes like a compulsion. You
know, the one I really wanted and never could get was the original Vogels. Oh my! I wanted that so bad. I know about that book. Like I know about that book. I'm like, I actually had a second edition photocopy that I got out of a library that I photocopied the whole book. I actually found it in a second edition in a library, you know, a university library, and I photocopied the whole thing.
That's awesome.
I wanted first edition. I could never find it.
I wonder if the current generation, I think it goes beyond just being spoiled by endless access to endless information, but maybe there's even just a lack of appreciation for it. Because it would be one thing if everybody just took it for granted, like that I could imagine, because why wouldn't you take it for granted if your entire life, every piece of information has been a Google search away? But there's another layer to it where I feel that people almost just don't even, when the information became more available, people started caring about it less.
I agree, because I remember Dewey Decimal System having to go find the books from the actual library. You go to remember the card catalog, Dewey Decimal System, go find the card, then go find the book. You know, at the libraries. I mean, it took effort. It took effort to find the book.
And then you find the book and you photocopy every page, and then you have this connection of the labor associated with preserving this information. And if you don't preserve it, you may never see the book again.
Right.
So you're reading all these books, you're getting interested in the whole deal.
Right. I guess it started with taking, a little bit of acid in high school, which I actually sold it to make ends meet because I wasn't doing very well at home because of the situation. And so I used it as a way to eat, basically. And the proceeds, I noticed a lot of my friends who also did the similar things that I was doing, selling acid, and we're making money and buying nice clothes and getting other things. And I was literally putting my money into books.
Yeah.
And I'm being completely honest with you, I didn't understand a good portion of the books I bought. I probably, the knowledge in them was so much greater than I had that I was just sometimes look at a book and not understand it and have to come back a year later.
There's something aspirational, like by owning the book, you can then learn the information. You don't just get books on things you already know. Like
Right.
I do exactly the same thing. Sometimes I'll buy a book specifically on crystallography or something because I think having this on the shelf will motivate me to internalize this information about crystallography that I otherwise might not feel motivated to learn.
Yeah, I got one about magnetic crystallography one time. Didn't understand shit of it. Didn't understand any of it. But I still bought it. At a bookstore. I remember buying that one. I was one of those ones that was way, way above my pay grade. I was like, I bought it thinking, oh, this sounds cool. And I didn't understand hardly anything in it. I mean, I still would have bought it. You know what I mean? I think I bought that one at a Barnes & Noble of all places.
These days, alternative cannabinoids or altnoids have become increasingly popular. You may have heard about THCP or THCV, but have you heard of THCB? B. The butyl. Over 86% pure THCB isolate. That's impressive. This was just a year or two ago, a trace oddity that people only speculated about. Now we're living in the future. You can get THCB on the internet. If you're listening to this right now, you can just order THCB. What a time to be alive. Can you imagine? You can just order the butyl THCB from Canaclear.com. Use the promo code Hamilton. You gotta cherish these moments while they last, because one day you're gonna wake up and the government is gonna have decided to protect you from THCB. They're gonna step in to save you from THCB.
So you're getting all these books, you're reading about the science related to psychoactive drugs, you're selling LSD, you're enjoying LSD. Mm-hmm. And this is in
high school,
Texas in the 80s though, right? So there's
late 80s, right.
So you're kind of in the epicenter of MDMA in the United States.
Yeah, I think that I didn't try MDMA till I was like 17 and fell in love with it. It was just amazing the first time I did it. And I think that is a definite, when I did that for the first time, I actually, it's when I started looking at MDMA chemistry-wise and going back to those same books that I already had. That, because I had no interest chemically in LSD or MDMA until I had done it. It wasn't even on the radar for me. Like I had never done it, never really even heard about it. I kind of heard about it, but then a buddy of mine gave me one, and I think I was 17 years old. I still remember this day what it was like doing it. But yeah, it was interesting. I liked it a lot, and I went back to those similar books, and I noticed that. I remember in Uncle Fester's, he had a section on ecstasy in one of his books, because he's a methamphetamine manufacturer, but it is a methamphetamine, and he actually had a reference to ecstasy in one of his books.
Right. So a lot of the same chemistry.
Right.
Or the same types of chemical transformations.
Sure. No, I know that now. I got out of high school when I was 17. I stopped going because I got into an argument with a police officer on campus. And I was told never to come back. So
what were you arguing about?
He took my pager from me. Yeah, this is in the age of pagers. And they took my pager from me because they knew what I was doing. And they also knew my mother was in a mental institution. And I told them that I needed that to talk to her, which is a total lie. She couldn't call out.
Yeah.
But they took it from me, and I was very angry.
Yeah.
And so I got into a basically a yelling match with them. It didn't become physical.
Yeah.
But when I called back to see about getting my pager back, they said, "Don't bother. We sent it in the mail back to the provider, and don't bother coming back." And so that was it was 2 weeks left of my junior year. That would be 91.
Okay.
So
you're kicked out of high school for a pager.
Right.
Argument.
Well, if I'm being completely honest here, they knew what I was doing as far as selling LSD, because a friend of mine worked in the office, and he overheard them talking about setting me up for selling LSD, and I heard about it through people. And so as a joke, I thought it would be funny to go talk to the guy supposedly supposed to set me up, and I gave him an envelope with LSD 25 written on it and a piece of paper. And so I gave him the piece of paper and said, "Here, take that back to whoever's asking." And that's when they started searching me daily. And then it got to the point where I couldn't even, they were like, go, get out of here.
Yeah.
So they found a way to get rid of me.
Yeah.
I don't blame them. I'm not mad at them for it. I mean, they're just doing their job.
Yeah.
So I'm not mad at them. But yeah, that would have been my 2 weeks left of my junior year, but I wasn't going to get credit anyway. At that time in my life, skateboarding is my passion. Like that is my passion. Like skateboarding. That's my thing. I've been doing it since I was 12 years old. I'm 50 now. I got hurt real bad 3 years ago, like real bad. So I can't really skate much anymore. Like broke 4 bones all at once and punctured my lung.
What were you doing?
Skating vert.
Shit.
And microdosing mushrooms.
Oh my God.
While skating vert. Yeah, but it was literally like the size of my thumbnail. And it just got me giddy and was enjoying flying through the air. And then I somehow forgot to fall properly. And the flat bottom got there pretty quick. And I broke my femur, my sternum, 2 ribs, and collapsed and punctured my right lung.
Damn.
And anyway, we'll get to that. That's further down. But I'm trying to go chronologically.
Okay.
I'm trying to go chronologically. So, see, 91, I'm out of school. I went and I took my GED. I didn't wait. I went ahead and took my GED like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later because I figured in my head I better go get it knocked out before I forget half this stuff. So I actually went and got my GED a couple weeks later at the local college. And then what would have been my senior year, I enrolled at Victoria College. My dad was still alive at this point. And he paid for, I would have been my senior year. I actually enrolled in college a year early, which would have been my senior year. But because I got a GED, I was allowed in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to...
so you're actually like ahead of things.
Kind of. Something like that. I mean, I still had to take one remedial language class because I'm dyslexic and I'm, not the best at writing and stuff like that. So I had to take a remedial writing class or whatever, language studies class. But other than that, my major or whatever you claim it was medical lab technology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to take chemistry. A prerequisite I reached by taking the task or whatever it was, the college entrance exam. And I passed all that stuff with flying colors except for the language part. And so other than the language part, I was getting credit for the medical lab technology degree with, taking the appropriate math and the chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and that would have been in fall of 91. And so I did a semester of that. And I'm not going to lie, I did not do that great. I think I barely passed. I passed, but barely.
One deciding factor in people's ability to do well in these sorts of classes is often whether or not they can recognize that it's cool, that it's interesting, because it's too complicated and boring to fight through it if you don't care.
I agree, because there's the chemistry, we had a lecture class and a lab class attached to it. And yes, the lab class was very interesting, where you actually got to play the toys or tools, whatever you want to call them. You got to actually see the chemical reactions. You got to work with them, and then you fill out the paperwork as you went and understand what was going on. But like the lecture was very difficult to follow at times. It wasn't that interesting, and it was just book related and following the chemistry book, just through the pages of it. But the lab class was really interesting.
So you're taking the lab class, and are you connecting the application of the chemistry classes and your previous interest in these books?
Yeah. It was half the reason I took the class.
Yeah.
That was half the reason. In fact, a good portion of the reason I took the class.
So that's in the back of your mind.
Yes.
You're thinking.
Yes, but I did not share that with my father. No. I did not share that portion of it with my father.
And what was your feeling about doing something like that? Because at least for me, growing up in the 90s, I think it would have been unthinkably dangerous. I feel like I would have been too afraid to go down. I would extract stuff from plants or buy things on the internet, but the idea of doing actual synthesis was very frightening.
The first semester I took of chemistry, I don't think I was prepared to do anything like that anyway.
Yeah.
Like mentally or knowledgeably. I don't think I was ready for that. And so I didn't really do anything with that chemistry at that point, because there's a large gap between that semester of chemistry and then the next one when I went back in 97, which was funded by other people, but we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there. But there's a large gap of time from my first and second semester of chemistry.
So you get through the classes, then do you finish?
I finished the first semester. Like I said, I passed, but barely.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I didn't go back to school until 97 and, enrolled at San Antonio College at that point with continuation of the same degree, lab technology, whatever. I think it was like a 2-year degree or something.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I would have been in chemistry 2, chemistry 1, second semester.
Okay.
So still the first year of chemistry,
Yeah.
but second semester is what I started out at in 97.
And wait, did you just say like other people that you'd already met these people that were
That I worked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually met them in 94. My father passed away December 1st, 93. I met and I inherited a little bit of money, not a lot, but some, and I used that money to buy a decent amount of ecstasy, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Like not producing nothing, I just buying off somebody else. And that's how I met these people.
And nowadays, most MDMA's in like powder form, I imagine.
It was in capsule.
It was in capsules. Okay, all right.
It was in powder. It was in capsule, powder inside of a capsule.
Uh-huh.
Clear capsule.
And what were you doing? Were you working? What made you want to buy a huge amount? I know that you inherited this money, but what were your life circumstances that?
Well, again, I don't think I'd ever had a real job per se, like a grown man's job. You know what I mean? Yeah, I had some odd jobs and stuff like that, but I don't think I had the probably the intelligence to do it the right way, to go about my life the right way. Instead, I was taking shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
Buying a bunch of ecstasy and selling it. And I joke, by the way, about I was horrible at selling drugs to the point that I had to go into manufacturing. Because I was always too nice. To be honest, I was too nice. I ended up giving half of it away half the time. Like, or people are always my friend and like, oh, give me a better deal. And I'm like, okay. And so I, like I said, I always joke. I was so horrible at selling drugs that I had to go into manufacturing. I had to change departments.
This podcast is also brought to you by Lucy Nicotine, a company that makes nicotine pouches, nicotine gum, and nicotine lozenges. I particularly enjoy the apple ice flavored nicotine pouch. It is a refreshing and well-formulated product. If you don't already use nicotine products, I recommend you don't begin. They're habit forming. But if you do, I think this is the finest nicotine product on the market. Thank you, Lucy. And in case this isn't already obvious, warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical.
But
And tell me about, why I assume that you had tried MDMA. Did you think was there a social motivation? Was there a feeling like?
I think I liked having it to do it because I enjoyed doing it. And then I think having it, and at that time in the early 90s, having it was kind of a rarity. You were not, like everybody had pot. A lot of people had acid, but very few select people sold ecstasy. Like, a lot of people had cocaine back then and stuff like that. But, it was only certain people that had access to MDMA.
And was this like a club scene, the skater scene?
I was probably
scene?
more on the skateboard scene.
Yeah.
But my clients for the ecstasy, they ran the gambit. A lot of them worked in hair salons and went to raves and clubs and stuff. I'm not much of a rave club goer myself, but a lot of people would purchase it from me and then go do that. There were still raves back in that day, big open field raves in Texas where they would, or warehouses in Austin. They would do that.
And you're just selling these capsules out of an apartment or something?
Yeah, I had a house.
Yeah, okay, cool. And the fact that it's even powder in the capsules maybe suggests that they're close to a source of.
Right. I don't know who the source was per se. I heard word of mouth who the person was, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But I think they were being made locally in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
That's from what I understand.
Yeah. Texas, was the.
Yeah, an epicenter. I've learned that now, actually.
Yeah.
Later in life, I learned that because I watched some documentaries. I'm like, no shit. I was that close to the area that kind of started it all off. And Dallas, in fact, was real big.
Yeah.
Dallas was real big with that.
Yeah. Okay, so you meet these people, and how much, just out of curiosity?
I was buying hundreds at a time.
Hundreds of capsules.
Right,
Yeah.
100 to 200 at a time.
Yeah.
At $12 a piece, which is a lot of money for that back then. It's
$12 a piece. Damn,
right.
That is a
selling
lot.
them for 20, so the markup wasn't really that big, wasn't that great. considering I like to eat half of them.
How do you feel about it? You know, a lot of people, especially with psychedelics, they have a kind of spiritual connection. Sometimes it gets a little extreme and it's like a messianic, save the world kind of mission, or they think that they're going to make the world a better place or end war.
I see where you're going with this. And yes, I think I did have such delusions of grandeur of that at times. I'm not saying all the time, but I think I know what you're saying. But yeah, there were times where, especially when you're on it and you feel like, oh, wow, this is just great. I want to share this with everybody. And I want everybody to feel what I feel. And you know, maybe the world will become a better place because of it. And then, you know, that wears off eventually. And, you know, then, you know, you come back to reality and you realize you've eaten half of your stash and, you know, and you're like, damn it. So.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy. I mean, even I have this feeling where the last time I took an MDMA type drug, it wasn't MDMA, but it was something sort of chemically in the same ballpark. And I went to a party and ran into someone who I really, really dislike and was able to very genuinely say like, hey, good to see you, and I mean it, and didn't have the thing where there was some kind of flood of effusive love where I was like, oh, we're, you know, we're all brothers, we're best friends or anything like that. But being able to just genuinely say, hey, nice to see you and mean it, isn't that in its own small way such a impressive little contribution to the world? And if more people could just be able to abandon their petty annoyances with one another.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know what you're talking about, because there's something similar. I ran into someone while I was on ecstasy once that I did not get along with, and I remember walking up to them thinking I was going to pick a fight with them because that was that much of a beef, and I couldn't do it. I literally could not do it. I was too happy, and I was not an ass. You know, I wasn't trying to be difficult or anything. I think I walked up to them thinking I could do it, and then walked up and ended up having a good conversation with them. You know what I mean? I remember that explicitly at one party I went to. I remember talking about that for years later. I was like, damn, you know, because it was someone I had a really big beef with. Like if we ever saw each other, it was gonna, you know, something was gonna happen. And I think they were on ecstasy that day too. That's like that kind of situation where everybody at the party was on it, and I ran into him, and I'm like, yeah, no, I just ended up talking to him, you know, and nothing happened negative at all, you know.
So I think it's little things like that that make people think, oh, if more people had these sorts of experiences, maybe the world would be a better place. Maybe.
Certainly. Absolutely. I think it's one of the reasons I give it away so much. I literally have given away, if I'm being honest, probably in the number of thousands of hits in my life, given away thousands, easily thousands. Because I've given hundreds to like one person. So here you go. Bye. You know, go spread this out. Go. I've gone to big events, skateboard events. They do this thing called Punk Rock Camp Out. It's in Texas, and it's on 11 acres of land, and we occupy 11 acres, and you're trapped there for 3 days. Like you're told not to leave, and then they're basically surrounding. It's right outside Austin in Spicewood, Texas, and you're told not to leave by the landowners because the cops are outside. They know what's going on here. But as long as you stay where you're at, they're going to leave you alone. And I have went there with hundreds and just handed them out like candy and said, here you go. Literally. I mean, I didn't ask for a penny. I don't want the money. You know, it was more about just, I wanted to see as many people enjoy it. And I saw some weird stuff that night. Like
what?
I see a good friend of mine, John, I'd given some to him, and he took, you know, several. Like, people took advantage of it a lot because I had a lot on me. And I'd say, here, take as many as you want. I think then you're going to take 4 or 5. People would grab 20. And then, you know, whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I saw him later on, and he was running out of a tent naked, being chased by another chick's boyfriend. And he and her were in there having sex. And he literally jumped out of the tent naked. And I'm assuming he's on ecstasy at this point. I don't know for certain, but I'm assuming he took him a couple hours earlier. And it was just funny, just watching this unfold in front of me, you know, just literally there's a naked dude running past everybody being chased by the boyfriend. And, then, you know, she was in there with him. You know, I assume it was mutual, consensual. I'm assuming. She was naked too, from what I understand. I didn't really see her, but
it's probably why the boyfriend was pissed.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, it was just funny, you know. Yeah. To me, it was almost like a cause and effect. The fact that he, you know, I saw that girl by him when he grabbed them all off of me, and I thought to myself, what's he up to? And then, like I said, a couple hours later, I see him running out naked, Because the punk rock camp out is camp out. You bring your tent, and you're there for 3 days. It's a really fun event. They don't do it anymore, but it's a really fun event.
So you meet these people that you're buying the MDMA from, then what happens? Or who are these people?
Okay. I met Berto
Okay.
in 94, who I used to buy ecstasy off of, and cocaine, but cocaine was never really my thing. It was more just having it available. When people came over to buy X, sometimes they'd buy that as well. Really, that was more of a product of availability, more or less. It wasn't really it's never really been my thing. But I met him in 94, and I started buying hundreds of hits of ecstasy off him every couple of weeks, sometimes every week, depending on what was going on that week, whether it was spring break or something, major going on. And I guess I started building a rapport with them. And they actually did notice my book collection, because I probably shared it with them at some point. You know what I mean? Like I had actually, they knew of my knowledge or want of knowledge of such things. Mm-hmm. They knew of it. That's kind of how, and I'll get there. Yeah, I met them in 94. Berto he's a few years older than me, about 5 years older than me. I had heard about him through people that were older than me. And they used to be an organized group. I don't remember the name that they went by. It doesn't even matter. But it was him and his buddy. They were known to be suppliers of ecstasy and cocaine throughout the city I grew up in, like large amounts.
And what kind of people are they? Are they other skater type?
No, not at all. In fact, my skater friends did not even know about them. I would have never met them if I hadn't had the money to buy hundreds at a time. They would have never even given me the time of day. Mm. That's, that was my in with them, if you could call it that, which was a dumb thing, but yeah. But yeah, they're the type of people. They're meatheads. The big bodybuilder types. Okay. Right down to the they look like something out of tracksuits and hanging out at coffee shops and gymnasiums. Okay. So that's that kind of group. And there's a few of them in that group, but there's two main, who I just mentioned. But I began to get a rapport with Berto over about a year and a half. So 94, 95, selling ecstasy. And I ended up moving out of the same city, and I ended up owing them quite a bit of money, like thousands. And oh, man.
Because they had fronted you some...
Right. And, you dig yourself a hole pretty quick when you eat half the profit, I'm exaggerating, but maybe not too much. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I ate half of it, but, in the end, I'm owing thousands of dollars. But
were you frightened of these?
Oh, absolutely. They had a reputation for beating on people and making them pay, throwing people down flights of stairs. Things like that. They were big. They're 200 plus pounds.
This podcast is also brought to you by matcha.com. Grab a traditional matcha bowl or your favorite mug and enjoy a hot cup of matcha first thing in the morning. I don't drink coffee, but I think matcha is a wonderful way to start the day. It contains L-theanine, it contains caffeine, which is what I'm most interested in, and it has all sorts of purported health benefits. Matcha.com was founded by psychedelic pioneer Dr. Andrew Weil. All of their matcha is imported from Japan and third-party tested for heavy metals. It's delicious, probably healthy, and certainly stimulating. So enjoy a cup of matcha from matcha.com.
So why'd you even get yourself into a situation where you owed money to frightening people?
Because I made really bad decisions at that point. Really bad decisions. And I was a dumb kid that, an immature 19-year-old, to be honest. Didn't really have a direction. My father just passed away. My mom was a mental institution. There really wasn't anybody who gave me direction. And I'm not trying to blame anybody else, because that's not fair. That's not, I take responsibility for it. Like there's no one else to blame but me, period. And I don't even blame them per se, because I chose to interact with them at some level. I sought them out at some level to buy ecstasy in the beginning. Granted, it morphed into something else because the fact I owed them money, I ended up having to do jobs for them to work off the money. And what I mean by jobs is transporting large amounts of things from different areas of the country to different other areas. And I would get money knocked off what I owed, or get paid partial and get some knocked off. But basically in that process, my job morphed from one of purchasing from them to one being run by them. And I think that the constant keeping me in debt, because it seemed like I never was able to work off my debt entirely, or I'd get close and then it would be something else. You know, it would be something like along those lines. I did a few jobs for them and moved some stuff around. And that would be 95. I guess by about 95 now, here we're at. Around the end of 95, beginning of 96, they came to me and asked me how I felt about helping someone cook ecstasy. They had actually came and talked to me about it. And I said I was interested, but I'm not a chemist. I'm not even close to being a chemist. I don't even consider myself anything like that. But the original job that they came at me with was they had a chemist in Denver, in Colorado, who was going to come down to Texas, and I was going to help them acquire the chemicals and be their gopher, basically. Basically, I was going to be their helper. But in the meantime, I had a list of chemicals that I was given, and I had to figure out how to obtain them, which took some work, but I was able to figure out ways to do it.
And just to go back a tiny bit, it's good you were taking responsibility, saying that you don't blame anyone, and that's typically a good way to be about things. But I certainly have known drug dealers who semi-intentionally get people into that position.
Oh, absolutely. But I at times they were my friends and would act in such a way, like, caring and empathetic to my situations, and it sounded very good. Like they were very manipulative, but I actually can't say that I didn't see it coming. I'm not stupid.
Like there was a big guy in New York City who supposedly was the person who sold Philip Seymour Hoffman the heroin that he died on. But I knew a lot of people that worked with this guy, and he was infamous for doing that, where he would work with people who were addicted to drugs and would front them drugs, and then inevitably they couldn't pay for the drugs that they used, and then, okay, well, I'm going to ship all my drugs to your house now as a way of paying it off. And it wasn't a coincidence that this guy was getting people into that position. He knew that he could manipulate people by making it so that they owed him something, so that they would put themselves in enormous legal risk for him.
And that absolutely happened. But like I said, I have to take responsibility. I wasn't stupid. I saw it coming.
Yeah.
And then yet it's like watching a slow train wreck.
And in terms of the courier type work, can you talk about that at all? What does that entail?
Almost like what you just said, my house was a stash house at times in my attic. And at times it was, the truth is I didn't even know what was in the container. And a couple of times, like I was told not to open it and I didn't. I'm assuming it was, by the size, I would assume it would be not pot, because pot's bulk, Back in these era, a pot, it would have been Mexican weed, because this is, early 90s.
Right.
It's not the pot of today.
Right.
But it was also guns, and because I did open one, and I found cocaine in one, like a decent amount of cocaine, and then I found a lot of guns and grenades and explosives.
Grenades.
And dynamite, like explosives. That's what was in there.
Wow, that's frightening.
Yes.
Who was even buying grenades?
I don't know. I never really saw anybody. It was such a way that the buffer was, when I dropped things off, it was always at gyms, like gymnasiums, and I would go buy a lock, and they would give me an address, and I would show up at that address, which is always a gym. And because I'm not a workout guy, I would actually go in there with the story, oh, I've been out all night, I need to take a shower, so I can't go home smelling like, some girl I just met last night. And because I'm not a workout guy. So I would just use that as an excuse to get in the gym, into the locker room. And then I would put the bags inside of it, because usually in a bag or something, I put it inside a locker, and then lock it up with the lock. And then I had a number to call and leave a message. And on the message, I say locker number 124. And then I would repeat the 3-digit code for the lock. And then I only had one occasion where someone called them to call me back, or he called me back, and it's like, that locker number that number didn't work, which is their fuck up, because I always kept a sticker on the back of the lock. You remember, there's always a sticker on it. I always kept it. So I was like, no, that's not, that's the number. They're just not doing it right. But so usually, almost always, I would never see anybody. I don't know. I don't know who these. I didn't really meet people.
And there's also an element of incrementally getting you used to doing risky shits.
Yeah. There's definitely that, and there's definitely, looking back, there's a progression, because there's some other jobs that I had to do for them, or willingly did for them at some level, I guess you could put it, that included, the phrase, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. These types of people were typically robbing other drug dealers of their shit because they hung out with them and knew where their stashes were. I was given a location on more than one occasion of where their stash was, and what car it was in, and where that car would be, and at what time. And I would break a window and open the door and go get the trunk and take it.
Yeah.
Not one of my finer moments.
Yeah. So
okay, yeah. How I got into the chemistry aspect with these people. Originally, like I said, they had a guy that was going to come down from Denver, from what they said, and they needed someone to be his gopher to get everything ready, to get the chemicals ready, to get things moving. And I was given a list of chemicals. They included HBr, safrole, ammonia, anhydrous ammonia for the main components, isopropyl alcohol, and glacial acetic acid. And I was able to figure out ways to get bulk. I was quite good at apparently getting them chemicals. I figured out a really, really good way to do it.
Can you tell me about it?
Sure. It's half by luck, because it was a friend of a friend introduced me to a guy in Houston who owned a freight forwarding company. I know it doesn't sound like much, but a freight forwarder is somebody who brings in freight from all over the United States and compiles it to go out of the country. A lot of that stuff's chemicals, especially in the Houston area, because it's a petrochemical supplier. So I was able to rent I won't say an office, I was able to rent access to the phones, fax machines, because back in the day of faxes, and access to the office. I rented it for I think it was $500 a month. And he actually introduced me to some of the people that ordered or got the chemicals that he shipped. And I was able to ask one of them if he could obtain a tank of HBr. That was the very first chemical I ever bought. Because I actually went to try to go to Mathis and Gas like an idiot the first time, before I met anybody. And oh yeah, I'm here to buy a tank of HBr. You can't buy that. You just can't. You have to be a company. You have to be established. You have to have an account. Right. So you can't just walk up in Mathis and Gas or Try Gas or any of the above and say, I need a tank of HBr.
Right. So
I was able to use the contacts through the freight forwarder to purchase my first tank of HBr. I remember it was a 30-pound tank, about that tall. It's not very big. And I think it was valued at about $1,200. And the deal was the person who I ordered it through got double the amount. So basically I paid $2,400 for a $1,200 tank. And that was my very first chemical purchase, was HBr. So here I am. I got a list of chemicals.
What about the safrole? Where'd you get that?
Safrole, that was multi-sourced, actually. The guys that wanted me to do these jobs for them, they actually had a source. Anyway, it's a company out of Canada. I don't remember the name of it. It was an essential oils company out of Canada. And actually, the mob-ish guys, whatever, organizational guys, they gave me the name of it. And then said, here you go, order. They told me to order it. And then I got everything shipped to that same freight forwarder, which is common. Like I'm getting shipments. They get shipments every single day from all over the world. So it's not any big deal to have 5 gallons of sassafras oil show up with, and when I would order, well, I wouldn't just order sassafras. I would order like lemon seed oil or, a couple other oils to kind of make it look as if I wasn't just ordering sassafras.
Right.
Granted, there would be 5 gallons of sassafras and 1 gallon of lemon and 1 gallon of orange and whatever. I wasn't spending a fortune on the other ones. But yeah, I could get 5 gallons at a time.
Do you remember how much it cost?
It was in the hundreds. It was probably about $500 for 5 gallons. It was really cheap looking back. Really cheap. Really cheap.
If you're looking for a Kratom product, allow me to recommend Top Tree Herbs and New Brew Kratom Kava Green Tea Seltzer. Both are third-party tested. These are pure products that I can personally recommend. New Brew is a delicious carbonated Kratom Kava green tea seltzer. And if you're looking for a nice, simple, tasty Kratom tea, go for Top Tree Herbs. This is your health. You should get something that's tested. You can get 15% off using the promo code Hamilton. Thank you, Top Tree Herbs and New Brew, for your sponsorship.
And do you think, because at that time there were companies that were already catering to underground chemists, do you think this was something like that, or these were legitimate?
They were legitimate companies, but I could tell in their voices when I would call that they're not stupid.
Yeah.
They almost giggled when I ordered, oh yeah, I need, 5 gallons of sassafras and 1 gallon. Like I said, I remember ordering lemon oil and orange oil. I remember that, and then 5 gallons of sassafras and then, oh, okay, uh-huh. And then, they would send it. And how I would actually get them to send it is I figured out that they needed a reputable money order or cashier's check from a bank, like to make it look legitimate, like to make it, you can't send them cash through the mail to these companies. So what I did was the banking system is geared. If you could go into Bank of America and if you bought a money order, which is $9 because they're expensive there, but it would be Bank of America, a legitimate big bank. And you could buy a money order for the amount of $2,499. As long as it wasn't $2,500, you wouldn't have to fill out a ticket for the IRS. So I would keep my purchases under that amount. And so then I would send them the money orders. I mean, and it looked legit. Like, I'm talking big Bank of America money order, looks like a company. And I would send them that in the mail. And then they would send me back the sassafras and lemon and orange.
And the anhydrous ammonia, how did you get that?
Similar with the freight forwarder, I was able to make a couple different contacts through him who, I was able to order my first anhydrous ammonia similar, like the same as the HBR. In fact, it may have been the same person that I got it through. And the deal was the total cost, and ammonia was cheap. It was really cheap back then. I mean, I think the first tank I ordered was also in a 30-pound range. It was about like that, little circular, looked like a big beach ball. And it was probably $80, $100. It was cheap. It was super cheap. And so like I'm paying double was nothing. It was nothing.
So you get these chemicals, then what?
Well, as I'm acquiring the chemicals, I have to get storage units, and then I also rent space at the warehouse. But they want me to start moving the stuff out of the warehouse because these people are paranoid. The organizational people, they're paranoid and they don't want to leave the stuff there for too long, so they want to get it moved out. So I start getting storage units, and then they start looking for places to cook. Mm-hmm. In this time frame, after I've spent, I remember the amount was close to $30,000 in the end because I started ordering glass. I started ordering, chemicals. It's a lot of money. Thousands and thousands of dollars have been spent at this point. I find out the guy from quote unquote Denver backed out of cooking for them. And from what I was told, at least that's the way I remember it, I'm not 100%, that he found out who was the money behind it and he backed out. He wanted nothing to do with it. I don't know what that means exactly, but...
And at that time, are these lists of things that you're acquiring coming exclusively from that guy? You're just filling out orders for the guy?
As I was told, but all this I'm being told by these organization people. Looking back, I wonder if there ever was a guy. I don't know. I looking back, was it possible that I was manipulated and then because at this point they go, I guess you're going to school. You see what I'm saying? At that point, when the guy backed out, there's already we've already spent this. Somebody's got to do it.
So they say, we're going to pay for your...
They got me an apartment in another city, and because I was in Houston at that point, and then I enrolled in school.
It's kind of exciting.
It is, and I do remember feeling delusions of grandeur and being cocky and excited, like almost like arrogant. It was very arrogant of me. Like I was probably an asshole. Like I probably was an asshole.
So what classes do you take? What university or what?
San Antonio College.
Okay.
Like I said, I had one semester under my belt. Didn't do, the grades were like a D. I mean, literally just barely passed.
Yeah.
And so I was able to enroll next semester, second semester, first year, organic chemistry. And I think I took the chemistry in the lab. I had a chemistry class, lecture, and lab. And I think I took one other class, and I never even went to the other class. Because they told me, oh, yeah, you can go enroll in whatever you want. Because the money wasn't the issue. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I was thinking, if I'm going to go to school, I might as well go to school. You know, a little bit. I think I took a math class, another math class. I didn't even go. I just went to the chemistry classes. And of all places, they had an apartment. It was a really small apartment. And here I am going to school for chemistry. And they want me to start figuring it out. There was a formula that was bought that I was given. A molecular formula, like 1 mole of safrole reacts with 1 mole of HBr in glacial acetic acid. And it was written in shorthand, and I was given that. I had to figure out what that meant because at this point in my life, I didn't understand it yet entirely. I had to go using my chemistry class and books that I had, figure out basically what this shorthand formula meant exactly. It didn't take long to figure it out. I mean, it wasn't like learning a completely different language, but I did have to figure out what exactly each mole meant and and figure out the math. Okay, well, that's 162 for safrole, I think is what it is, grams per mole. Mm-hmm. I think it's close to what it is.
Yeah.
So that's where you start. I reacted 162 grams of safrole, which you weigh it out, and then the HBr, and you got to bubble it inside of a solution. You got to weigh it before and after, and see if you've got 1 mole in there. Once you figure that out, your volumetric ratios. Once you figure out the HBr in there and the ratio of safrole is brominated by HBr and glacial acetic acid, I don't think I ever did the mole equivalents ever again. I just used the volumetric. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Do you know what I mean? I did the shorthand version and learned it and figured it out. It took me 5 tries to produce anything. Like I sucked at it in the beginning. I had to figure. I never used a distillation apparatus by myself ever in my life. I never used a pump and all this stuff. And I had to figure it out. It's not hard, but it's also a little intimidating.
And they're not providing you with any technical assistance.
No, none.
And are you talking to professors or classmates or keeping this pretty quiet?
I have a friend of mine who was a chemistry teacher's aide at University of Texas, San Antonio, which is another college in San Antonio. And he's a chemist. He's a chemist, similar to you. Probably not quite your caliber, but comparable. He knows his shit. He also has a methamphetamine addiction. He likes to make meth. He actually made meth at the University of Texas and got caught more than once. So he's actually in prison for the rest of his life now. He's never going to get out.
For manufacturing methamphetamine?
Yeah, for manufacturing methamphetamine. He's blown up a hotel, and he blew up part of his dad's house doing lithium anhydride something, and it had an explosion, and it was on the news, and he got 45 years for that, and it breaks my heart because he's a good man. He's not a bad person. But anyway, he is someone that when I run into problems, I can go talk to and ask questions. He's not gonna sit there in front of me and show me, but in pitfalls, for instance, the bromo portion, which I'll get to, distilling bromo safrole is a pain in the ass because of the cleavage, which I found out the hard way. You know about the bromine molecule cleaving off that, and what the result is.
Produces isosafrole or back to safrole, right?
Well, yeah, but it creates an explosion and it cleaves and it makes a huge amount of smoke. And I had Mr. Ed, let's just call him Mr. Ed, had asked me this question. Oh, by the way, are you going to distill the bromosafrole? And I said, probably not, because from what I had done at this point, I could probably isolate it without distilling it, from what I thought. Well, when the time came to distill the bromosafrole, I was like, I can do this. It is not an easy task, because let me tell you why. Once you isolate the bromosafrole, after you brominate it with HBr and glacial acetic, you put it under a stir, ice bath, 24 hours. You pull it out of that, you pour it over water. You do a typical like water wash, like you're deacidifying it. Mm-hmm. So you're becoming neutral. You're trying to neutralize all the acid that's still left over from the glacial acetic and the HBr. That's basically the bromosafrole. Now it turned from yellow to purple. It's purple.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting, because I haven't done too much chemistry, a moderate bit of methylene dioxy compounds, but my impression was always that you have to be incredibly careful with acids on anything with a methylene dioxy ring, because it can hydrolyze. You can have acetal hydrolysis, and then you get these incredibly colored, I'm assuming orthoquinone species. I think that might be what's going on with some of this purple MDMA that was circulating for a long time.
Well, the bromosafrole itself is purple. The crude form of it's purple. When you distill it, it becomes yellow.
And you're keeping everything anhydrous? Is that
right?
You are? Yeah, because I would imagine water would promote hydrolysis of the methylene dioxy ring.
Well, you still got to wash. You still, once you brominate, you pour the glacial acetic acid, bromosafrole now, over water and ice, and you allow the ice to melt, and then the bromo goes to the bottom, and it's sitting there. It's heavier. Mm-hmm. It's sitting on the bottom. It's purple. You can see it. You can see through the water and see it's purple. And you basically decant off and add water, wash, stir it up again with basically a paint stir is how you can do it really easy inside of a 5-gallon bucket. So you can see it, and you just add water, wash it really, really good, and then let it settle out. Decant, do it again. Do that 3 times. And then on the 4th one or 5th one necessarily, you do a bicarb wash to try to make sure your acid's neutralized.
What kind of purple? Like an eggplant purple?
Yeah, very similar to eggplant purple. Yeah, that deep purple. Mm-hmm. And once you've got that neutralized, and you can tell when it's neutralized by adding a little bit of bicarb, and it doesn't fizz anymore. Like there's nothing that fizzes. I'm talking about a pinch. You're like, oh, there's no more fizz. You can check the pH, or you can just do that. They both work very well. Now I've got the bromosafrole. It's now decanted and then added it to a flask, and I'm going to distill it. Here's where the problem ends up being. You set up for vac distill, below atmospheric. The bromosafrole is very sensitive to heat and vac just like being disrupted. It will superheat like that, like super fast. In other words, let's say, for instance, I've got my stir going, I got my vac setup going, got everything going. I know my order of operations. I set my vac or stir, vac, heat. You got to do it in that order. So I've got that going. Everything's going well. I got the heat up. I don't remember if it's like 4 or 5, 6 maybe on the dial. It's not all the way up. You start collecting over about 75 C. Let's say, for instance, your vacuum goes out at this point, or you have to change a flask out for your receiver flask. You know what I'm talking about? You take your vac out real quick, and you change your receiver flask to a dry one to collect your now bromosafrole coming over.
Yeah.
In that meantime, from when your vacuum is broken, that bromosafrole superheats very, very quickly. And if I don't do it fast enough, that bromine molecule will cleave off of that safrole, and in the process, it creates an explosion. And it is a huge, it's not a fireball, there's no fire, but it explodes, and it breaks the glass, throws shit everywhere. I had a thermometer go into the roof. It cleaved. And I did not know about this until I found it the hard way.
Interesting.
Which my buddy, he was a chemist, When I went to him after the explosion, I said, hey, why didn't you tell me this was going to do this? Oh, you said you weren't going to distill it, was his answer. That was his answer. And he kind of smirked like that. He's like, well, damn it, I would have been nice to have known. Because he had made ecstasy as well. He's a chemist. He's made all kinds of stuff.
And were you using books? What was it? I mean, even for something as simple as figuring out the boiling point of the bromosafrol, what was your...
I've always had a Merck index.
Yeah.
I have one today. I still have one. Yeah, you can't not have a Merck. I have a teacher's edition Merck.
So, you have the Merck index, are you using any of your other books? Or you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm constantly reading them and trying to see how they associate. What are similarities between the formula that I was given and trying to figure it out. Formulas I see in the books, usually the underground ones, that are the similarities between them. See the similarities, like what? Okay, for instance, in one of, I think it's in Uncle Fester's, he says 48% glacial, 48%. HBr in water for bromination of safrole. That does not work at all. Will not work. You won't brominate shit. It will not brominate anything.
I would imagine it would destroy the safrole as well.
I tried it. Does not work. Maybe that was one of the 5. I don't remember the order, but like I said, it took me till the 5th try till I created a product, and that may have been one of them because that did not work at all. I didn't. So the glacial acetic, I remember the glacial acetic and getting it. It was in that formula that was given. I remember that being a little bit of a game changer.
And would you pre-distill the sassafras oil, or was it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And there's no isomerization required, right? You just
No.
Yeah.
You're not at all.
And are you done with your chemistry class? Did you complete that?
Oh no, I'm still going to school while I'm trying to learn. I'm also going to school and trying to make ecstasy at night or on the weekends or whatever. In this little apartment, like with a small chemistry set, like literally drinking, 100 mil distillation flask, 20 mil collection flask, little stuff, nothing big. Robinair AC vacuum bought from a pawn shop.
Okay. Do you finish the classes eventually, or?
No, because I was able to produce. Once I was able to produce, and I remember the first time I produced, I made 200 hits, 20 mils worth, about 20 mils worth. And they said, you're not going to school anymore. And they moved me to another city.
And where were you working? In an apartment?
Yep.
Same place you were living?
Mm-hmm. Not ideal, looking back. Not ideal.
Was that frightening?
The explosion was extremely frightening. And if I'm going to be honest with you, the only thing that saved me that night from not going to jail that night was it was a huge rain that night. And it was cloudy as fuck outside and raining. So while that explosion I had from the first bromo safrole I distilled and it broke vacuum and it cleaved, I mean, it's a lot of smoke. And I remember the next day I pissed bright orange thinking the bromine molecules just ran through me. Seriously, I'm not joking.
Wow.
I'm not joking. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to prison now because there's smoke billowing out my window, billowing. And the only thing that saved me is it was probably 2 a.m. and it was pouring down rain and cloudy as fuck outside. If it had been a sunny, clear sky, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Right.
So that was.
Do you have neighbors?
Yeah.
What did they say?
Well, no one said anything. It was like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's not a good story in some ways. It's not fun times.
But I imagine it's still sort of exciting.
A part of me still gets excited about it. I mean, there's a part of me that loved it. There's also a part of me that realized at some point that it wasn't worth what I paid for it. Because in the end, I lost my child. I lost my fiance. I have 2 children by 2 different women. And basically, they partly paid the price.
We'll get
Anyway.
into that. So,
Right.
Okay, so eventually you succeed in
Correct.
distilling the bromosafrol.
Well, no, after the cleavage, I stopped doing that.
Oh, I see.
And I figured out another way to isolate the bromo. It was a more crude form of bromosafrol. It didn't really lose it was still a light purple. I could wash it so many times, neutralize it, and I figured out if you put it in a set funnel and you put it in the fridge for a week, it will actually separate that deep purple will turn into a lightish red and will actually become clearer and clearer. Like it's opaque. Like you could not see through the bromosafrole when it's in its crude form. But if you put it in a refrigerator, apparently when it's cold and you put it in a set funnel for take like a week, it'll actually clear up.
You have the bromosafrole and then water on the top layer.
Top.
Okay. Interesting. That is interesting.
So I stopped after my cleavage incident, which by the way, I had 3 more after that because I kept trying to distill it, but we'll get there. Once you have crude bromosafrole, you take isopropyl alcohol, chill it best you can in the freezer. You're not going to freeze it, but you chill it. And then you pipe in anhydrous ammonia at a very slow rate with a stir. So the slower the rate, the less it'll warm it up, because it will warm it up over time. And you add that until it will not hold anymore. And what I mean by not hold anymore is that it reeks so bad of ammonia that you can't even be above the bottle while it's open because it will burn your freaking eyes. Like literally, you have to have a full face respirator.
Right.
It will burn your eyes. And that's how you know it's as much as it can hold. I don't think I even checked the density on it. It didn't matter. It couldn't hold anymore.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even matter. And my thinking was at the time, because of the formula called for, bromosafrole in a pipe bomb or hydrogenation chamber. I think is what was it technically called that? A pipe bomb is a hydrogenation chamber.
Could be. I mean, there's like a pressure bomb is
right.
Yeah.
So it's in a stainless steel 316, 12-inch long, and I think I remember the volumes. It ended up being 60 mils of crude bromosafrole to about 650, because it was about 700 mils volumetric of the pipe. It was about 700 mils. So 60 of it and was bromosafrole. The rest was IPA saturated with ammonia. You just fill it till it's full, which is about 700 mils total.
In a pressure vessel.
Right.
Okay. And then what?
And this is where actually Uncle Fester is correct, because this portion of it matches Uncle Fester's. You put it in that pressure bomb. It talks about it in Uncle Fester. And you put it in an oil bath at 130 degrees centigrade for 3 hours. One of the things that became a game changer was gas Teflon from Home Depot. Regular Teflon did not work on these threads. It would leak.
And you're doing this in an actual metal pipe?
Yes. From
Home Depot?
Not Home Depot. I had to buy it at stainless steel supply house.
I see.
It was stainless steel. You can't the stuff at Home Depot is galvanized. You can't use that.
Interesting.
It has to be stainless steel.
But these are not chemistry vessels. This is improvised equipment.
They're considered nipples because they're threaded on either end. You can buy them in 12-inch increments, and they're threaded. They're already pre-threaded. And so I would thread one down with Teflon, and if once I would thread them both down there once it was full, and if one side didn't leak or both sides didn't leak, I'd pick one and never open that one side again. I left it. Do you understand? There's no reason to open both sides.
Right.
You only have to open one.
Right.
So it would be a pressure vessel. You would put it in an oil bath for 3 hours at 130 degrees centigrade. After the time was up, I would typically, because I had a welder's glove, I would pull it out of the oil bath and then go put it in the shower to cool it down and to wash off all the residual oil on the outside of it. Because if you didn't, it was a pain in the ass to use pipe wrenches. Because you'd use pipe wrenches, 2 of them, to open them up. And you have to cool them down, because otherwise that ammonia is it will go. And trust me, you only do it once.
Right.
You only do that mistake once.
Yeah, it's rough.
Oh, yeah.
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 This whole thing, there's a lot of foul smells going on.
I'm lucky to be alive.
Yes. Okay, and did this work the first try?
Once I got to the isopropyl and the ammonia, I do believe it did work, because that's fairly simple.
And were you using the Hive or any internet resources?
Back then, the Hive didn't exist. Hive existed, because you're talking like 97. The Hive didn't exist yet. There was a drugs forum that I recall that people got on, and my buddy, Mr. Ed, he had showed me some stuff and printed some stuff and gave me some literature. But the Hive didn't exist yet.
Okay.
This is pre-Hive.
So the internet is not your go-to
No.
source for information on this.
No. It's more books, libraries. I spent a lot of time at libraries. And sometimes libraries are actually my escape, if I'm being honest. Sometimes I would tell my friends that I worked for, I got to go study, and I would go to the library and look at books. Sometimes I'd just go there to hang out, just because I knew it was an environment for me to calm down.
And presumably they didn't understand the specifics of the synthetic struggles that
shit.
you were facing. So that what are they saying to you? Just like, get it done?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I might as well have been speaking another language. They first of all, I don't think they gave a shit. Personally.
Yeah.
They would try to listen to me sometimes. I think more or less to pretend to be my friend, if I'm being honest. Because they would listen sometimes when I was frustrated or something. And at the end, okay, well, what do you need? What do you need? I learned that what do you need means I can spend their money. It took me a while to figure that one out. There at the end, my only to them was, what else can I buy?
So you succeed with the synthesis of MDA from bromosafrole and ammonia.
Right.
And then what? So you open up the pressure vessel and...
You got to let it cool first. That's really important. It has to be at least room temperature, if not cooler. The cooler, the better. Because the colder it is, the easier it is to pour it out into the next... you pour it into a distillation flask, presumably a larger one, because you'd rather do a couple pipe bombs at a time. In the end, I was doing very large amounts of them, but in the beginning, I'd probably do one or two at a time, maybe one, in fact, for the first one. But you would pour that in there, and you would distill off your residual ammonia and IPA, which what I would do was I would get another cold IPA isopropyl, and I would put on the nipple of the vac, and put that into the IPA. So as I'm distilling the IPA and ammonia, the excess ammonia was being put back into another IPA that was already pre-chilled.
Oh.
So I was recycling the ammonia a little bit.
That's cool.
Yeah. I really did it to keep the smell down, but it worked for both.
And at this point, I imagine the market for MDMA was greater than the market for MDA. Were you making MDA simply because of the difficulty of acquiring methylamine?
Yes. Because I did look into trying to manufacture methylamine, and I think at that point in my career, so to speak, it was a little bit above my pay grade. There wasn't very many easy routes to methylamine at that point. It was all ammonium chloride formaldehyde. That was the only way, and I had heard from other people that that's a pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. So I never even attempted it. Okay. I did make methylamine later. I figured out a way to make a methylamine bubbler, which is interesting. But we can talk about that in a minute.
Okay. So you distill the
IPA, isopropyl ammonia out. Once you get your volume low, and let's say for instance, one pipe bomb, 60 mils bromo, it's about a 25% yield. You're still going to have a bunch of tar and resins that are created in this process. It's a very dirty process. You know your volume, so you got to estimate when you get low, when you get down to almost the last IPA, you add about equivalency of toluene, because IPA will boil off before the toluene. So now the product will go into the toluene, temporarily anyway. You don't want to take the volume all the way down because you'll burn it. Mm. So you need to add the toluene right before your IPA is all gone. Watch your thermometer. Once you know your IPA is gone, shut it down, let it cool back down. And now you've got a layer of toluene, and that's on top, and a brown, blackish layer on the bottom. And it's crude MDA.
And that's not soluble in toluene?
At this point, I think at this point it's insoluble. I think it's insoluble. It's very dark, so it's very difficult to see the line where it is, to be honest with you. But I remembered you needed to add something in it before the IPA was gone. But you would burn it. You needed to keep it in a liquid form, like liquid, because there's a lot of tars and a lot of resins in there that are created in this process, which you figure out later on. It's a bitch to get rid of, but you put a little toluene in there. Now what you need to do is acidify it with muriatic acid, and you have to shake this stuff for a good 15 minutes. I mean, you shake, and I would time it, shake it.
Oh, so you didn't distill the MDA base; you just distill off the.
No, I distill the free base off at the end, but I got to isolate it first.
I see.
And I got to get rid of the tars. And
Got
this is how you get rid of the tars. You put the toluene in, you acidify, shake for about, and I'm not joking, 15 minutes of hard shaking.
Yeah.
It would slowly break up those tars. Now it's acidic, so it's in the water.
Right.
What water is present. So now your toluene went from yellow to brown, which is a lot of the tars and stuff is now in the toluene.
Right.
Extract your toluene out. You separate a set funnel, get rid of your toluene. I always keep everything at the end just in case I've screwed up and got to go find it. But, and you can check your pH, make sure it's about a 3. Now you've got dirty toluene, and then you've got your crude MDA freebase and water. Now
or MDA hydrochloride.
Right.
Yeah.
MDA hydrochloride and water, correct.
Yeah.
Sorry. Now you need to add lye, sodium hydroxide, solution chilled. I would pre-make it and put it in the freezer because it creates so much heat.
Right.
And so I would chill it, and then I would add it slowly to the solution. And you could actually, again, shake a lot, which slowly in the beginning, because a lot of gases are, coming out. But you will see the color change of the tars and resins. The freebase will go up on top. It'll become a yellowish, brownish. You can see the difference. You can see the layer.
Yeah.
And at this point, once you've shaken it and you feel like you really only shake. I can't stress that enough, because that's how much you got to beat up these tars and resins and break them up, because otherwise the product gets trapped in it. And so now you've got that. Now you add another equivalency of toluene again, shake again, and then put it in a set funnel, and then let it sit for a little bit. And then once it's an hour, you can separate off your toluene. Now your product's in your toluene. You've got a pH of 10, 11, 12.
Right.
Somewhere in about 12. I guess 12. 12. Yeah, I guess that's about right. 12?
Sounds right, yeah. Good, yeah.
Close enough.
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah. So now it's in the toluene, and you have MDA freebase in toluene. You set up for a vac distill now. You distill off all your toluene at atmospheric. When it's almost all gone, turn it off, let it cool back down. Once it's cool again, and this is important because you can't just add the vac when it's hot, because it'll just jump everything across. It'll bump your freebase across. So everything has to cool back down. It's really important. So once everything's cool again, you set it for vac distill, and you collect everything. I would collect everything over 75C to about 110. And you could see at the end when it was almost nothing left in the distillation flask, but just a little bit of liquid and a little bit of darkness. Like it's literally there's almost nothing left.
Right.
And at this point, you know what your yield's going to be, because you can see your receiving flask, and you can estimate, it's a 50 mil and it's half, 25 mils. You got 250 hits at 25 mils. It's about 1 milliliter per, yeah.
Right. And the distilled MDA freebase is yellow oil, or?
Yeah, it's clear to yellowish, and the longer it sits, the yellower it gets. So then you add, to bubble it out, I actually had a hydrogen chloride tank.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I got lazy. In the beginning, I had to do the sulfuric acid in salt, non-iodized salt. No, it was muriatic acid with salt in it, non-iodized salt, dripped with sulfuric acid on top, and then had a pipette from a two neck with that. I would use a drying tube to make sure there's no water pressing, and I would bubble it with 7 volumes of toluene dried out with magnesium sulfate with the freebase. And I remember the first time it popped out of that. It's a very good feeling. I remember that. It was pretty. And I also learned the hard way. You really got to watch how much you've got to wash your crystals really, really well. because there's sometimes freebase present, and it will turn your crystals color quick. And then you also need to wash them with cold, either acetone or MEK,
Right.
to get them.
So yeah, tell me about it. So the first time you saw the MDA hydrochloride crystals precipitating from the toluene, this was, I imagine, exciting.
A very good feeling. A very good feeling. And I remember calling my associates that came over. One of them came over, and I was the guinea pig for the first, to see if it was worthy.
By choice?
I was happy to do it. I was happy to do it. And
had you tried MDA before?
No. Now that I think, honestly, I don't think so. No. And I never really thought about that. No, I really had never really done MDA before. I've done MD to my knowledge. Like, I don't know for 100% because I don't know what stuff people have given me, and I don't know.
Right.
You know, but no, I don't think so. That's funny. I never even thought about that.
And did you weigh it out on a scale? What was your process?
It's about 200 hits worth at 85 milligrams. So some math from there. I need a calculator.
But when you tried it, did you weigh it out on a milligram sensitive scale? What was the first?
I had a triple beam that I had stolen from my chemistry lab. I'm being honest.
Yes. And so you're there with the associates. You weigh out, what is it, 85 milligrams, 100 milligrams?
About 200 hits. And they I don't remember if I'd already had the capsules or they had brought them, but I capped them up and gave them to them.
But tell me about the first experience with it.
I remember I snorted it because they wanted to know right then and there if it was any good. I didn't eat it. I snorted it.
And was it good?
Yeah, it burned a bit because I still a little bit acidic now looking back. I remember it burned.
But you had a experience.
Pleasant experience, yes. It was. I knew right away it was good. I knew within minutes, mere minutes.
And they were happy?
They were very happy. And literally, within days, I was moved out of that apartment. Within days. They moved to another city completely. They didn't want me around people that I knew.
Interesting.
I get why they would do it. Looking back, they wanted to isolate me. They moved me 100 miles away.
Had they done this before?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. They've always, like I said, they've always had access to ecstasy. I don't know what their sources were. They didn't discuss that with me. I do know that they did have another source when they were involved with the people in Phoenix, because they had told me. They told me that they had another source that they were getting from Holland or Amsterdam, whatever. And but they liked mine better, is what they told me. They said mine would knock their dick in the dirt more. But looking back, theirs was probably MDMA, which lasts 4 hours, versus MDA. You're talking about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours. I could see why they'd say that.
Right.
You know, and one thing I did find, if you make a MDA and if you even make it 70 milligrams, it actually doesn't get as psychedelic or visual. It almost feels a lot more like MDMA if you do smaller dosage of MDA. I did notice that.
Interesting. And I imagine at this point you have paid off whatever debts that you had.
I paid off every debt. But here's where I want to kick my own ass. Because I was originally supposed to be the helper, I had only agreed to be the helper for a payment of $1 per pill as a helper. Now here I am, the manufacturer, the chemist, the chemicals I acquired, going to school, place to live, and delivery of said product. And I was still getting $1 per.
But they're paying for everything else.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I had a nice car, I had nice clothes. When we went out, we went to nice places, and we went to strip clubs. I didn't have to pay for anything, which, you know, it sometimes was fun. But did it pay my bills per se? Did it do things for my children? Oh, not at all.
Right. So they move you. Can you say where they moved you?
To Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Okay.
Where they moved me to a house in Austin, Texas, where they asked me But originally I wasn't supposed to cook anymore until they got me on some land. It was just supposed to be a stopgap, but apparently they needed the money or something or other. They asked if I could make a little more again. And so I did it again in the house in Austin, maybe 2 times of probably about 1,000. Because at this point I could do several pipe bombs and do the math and figure out what it's going to take to make that. And I would make about 1,000 each time. So about 2,000 hits in about a 2-month period. So it wasn't a lot. But in that meantime, they found a piece of property in Bastrop, Texas, which is right outside of Austin. I saw about 10 acres of land that they got for me.
And what was your feeling about this? Were you afraid? Did you feel like I'm the chosen one? Were they offering you more money? Why were you continuing to go along with it as it became more demanding?
I don't think I had to say it at this point. What was I going to say? And say, "Oh, I need more money." I guess I could have said that. I don't think it would have ended well for me physically. They're not. They were fairly violent people, and in fact, I was privy to several acts of violence from them, by them. I actually, I don't know if I want this in the end of it, but I'm gonna say it on here anyway. I got arrested for DUI on while I was going to college, and they bonded me out of jail. And when they bonded me out of jail, they picked me up from the jail and proceeded to beat the living fuck out of me and broke a cell phone. Back in cell phones back then, quite big, not like the big ones, but this is, 96, 97, 97. They broke their cell phone on my face and hit me in the face with it so hard, with their cell phone.
And was the anger because of the money of getting you out, or that you might draw attention to what they were doing?
I think the attention.
Yeah.
Is the attention. But I mean, I was a DUI. I didn't get convicted. I had a beer in an open container, and in Texas at that point, if you have an open container, it's considered DUI. I didn't fail the breathalyzer.
I see.
But they didn't care.
Right.
They didn't care.
And Austin is an interesting place. There's some clandestine chemistry history there that
it's because I didn't know anybody there.
Yeah.
I knew minimal.
Yeah.
But like I was telling you earlier, like skateboarding is my passion, and I found they had I like vert ramp, and they had a vert ramp in Austin, and I used to go skate on Wednesday nights, and I would tell the people I worked for, hey, I go skate on Wednesday nights. That's my thing. They would show up there just to make sure I was there. I would go out in the parking lot and they'd be out there watching me. They would follow me at times.
Okay, so it's a creepy...
Yeah, they would follow. At another time, they asked for a key to my apartment, and I had to give it to them. And I went back and they had searched my apartment. I don't know what they were looking for. Looking back, probably product. Probably thinking I was, subventing certain product in another direction or something.
So you have this 10-acre property, and what was the name of this?
Bastrop, Texas.
Bastrop?
It's about 30 miles outside of Austin towards Houston.
Okay. And is this the final?
No.
No, okay.
No. I was there about a year. About a year. Yeah, a year exactly.
Making MDA full-time?
Right. Full-time.
Same.
But synthetic. I still had the house in Austin. I had both. Because I technically was living at the house in Austin, which is where my residence was, but I was still cooking out of Bastrop.
And it's all the same chemistry, same everything? Yeah,
everything. At this point, I hadn't done a lot of other chemistry yet at that point. I think it is where I started getting bored with doing the same route over and over again, where I started to look at other routes. I actually, in fact, I had Strike's book. And there's, I think it's number 7 or 8 in there, and it's the sodium azide aliquot 336 or butylamine route. And it uses the same bromosafrole, which is already half of it. And it uses the yield is supposed to be quantitative at 95% is what it says. I never got that, but
with sodium azide.
Right.
And that's a little frightening as well because of the toxicity.
Hence the name I got, the overkill. That's why I got that. That's how I sold them on that. On the nitrogen stack from the azide, I told him it was so volatile that I needed a new vacuum.
It
sounded good.
Were you afraid to work with the Azide?
No, I didn't have any problems with that.
Yeah.
The issue I had with the Azide is twofold. I actually got magnesium turnings because it calls for magnesium. And you do, and this is off memory. I only did that route a few times because I had issues with it. But if I remember correctly, the magnesium turnings I had, it didn't react well. So as another alternative, I took striker pads, which is also magnesium, and then took a Dremel with a special bit, and I dremeled and had it strike off pieces of magnesium into a little collection area, and I would use fresh magnesium, and it worked better.
Oh.
It worked better. And there was one other trick that actually my buddy introduced. I can't say I did it because he mentioned it and I did it. I went and got a what are those jewelry cleaners that sonogram jewelry cleaners?
Like a sonicator?
Right. I put it under the reaction flask and turned it on and added the magnesium slowly like that, and it reacted quite well.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. And it was more controllable. Because one of the problems with that is, as you slowly add the magnesium, once it starts to react, it tries to use up all the magnesium very quickly. So you have to be in if you don't add it quickly enough, the reaction will go and stop, and then never start again.
Huh.
Or it'll go and use up all the magnesium, and it creates a lot of gases and like it foams up, like it wants to get out of get out of that reaction vessel or that distillation flask. It was a reflux. Is what it was.
Right.
But
so you're doing Azide route using ammonia, and are they
the Azide doesn't use ammonia.
Oh no, I mean as a separate. These are the two routes that you're experimenting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I got the Azide to work. I did get it to work, but one of the issues again with the reaction is once the reaction's finished, you have to be, and I can't remember the exact pH. It's something silly, like 8.2. Like literally, I had to get a pH meter and then add, in a big beaker, and then slowly add, up or down pH to get it to match exactly this number. And I got it exact, and it still created this. It looked like sand. I don't know what the byproduct was, but it looked like sand. And I could not even filter it out. I would clog up filter after filter after filter. I tried charcoal. I tried different types of filters, different, vacuum, you know what I'm saying? Different ideas of way to filter it out. And it was just impossible.
Huh.
It was I could get some of it, and then once it was filtered, I could put it in a set funnel, and the product would actually rise to the top. It would literally just be sitting on top. But pH is just, I couldn't get it to work.
And during this time, how were you thinking about this? Were you thinking like, this is just my thing now. This is my job. This is who I am. I began
to dread it. And particularly when Bastrop, I began to dread it because it was like they were never happy. It was like, oh, this holiday is coming up. You need to go to work. You need to make extra this time because there's this holiday coming up, and we need this much for this. And it never ended. And here's the thing: the amount of chemicals I had in the beginning, spent $35,000. Let's just say, I don't remember what the number was. Let's say 100,000, enough to produce 100,000 hits. Let's just say. They had me keep buying more and more chemicals and more. And I kept saying, I did stand up for this one. I said, I'm not agreeing to make all this because I saw the numbers. I can do the math and see I don't have the ability to make them. They wanted a million hits. They wanted enough to make a million. And I was looking at the math. I can't do this for 10 years because that's what it would have taken me. Maybe not literally, but something close to that at this rate. Because I'm not producing. Once I got up and running and was able to work through, there were some other issues with yields because I made another reaction vessel. I tried to make a big reaction vessel, and then my yields went through the crapper for a little while, but I figured out why. But
what went wrong?
The hydrogenation chamber I made that I sent you pictures of, did you see it?
No.
There's a 30-liter hydrogenation chamber, 304 stainless steel reaction vessel that I had made by a welder, and then I had a machinist thread the top, and I had a 12-inch thermocouple put inside it. But because it was 316 stainless steel, or 304, I think it was non-magnetic, so a stirrer would work inside it. And then I had a heating element built for it, with a rheostat, and it was like threaded up, like a heating element.
Yeah.
You know? It was beautiful. It's beautiful. But the issue was it took so long to heat up and to cool down that the heat degradation of the product affected the yields, especially even between that and the time it took to distill all of it out. Again, heat is degrading this product over time. So my yields went from 25 to 10% during that time. And it was the reaction vessel. It looked pretty, just didn't work as well.
So you were getting a 25% yield on
Roughly.
So that's not too good.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
I never said it was good. I never said it was a good route.
Interesting.
That's why I wanted the sodium azide to work, because it used the same bromosafrole, so I wouldn't have to change much of the chemicals up. You know, in other words, the glacial acetic would still be used, the HBr would still be used, and the quantitative amount was much higher. The yields are 95% is what the formula calls for. If you get a chance, look at Strike. I think it's number 7 or 8 in Strike's book.
Yeah, I think that was the route. I think he used a bromosafrole route, if I remember correctly.
I think so. Yeah. Do you know he's also from San Antonio?
Yeah.
I've never met him, but the funny thing was in my case, when the feds got it, they asked me if I knew Strike. And I said, I don't. I said, I don't know. And they go, and I asked him what he looked like. And they just smiled. And I said, I figured out later on I was right. I said, I bet he's kind of nerdy and long hair. And I found out later on he is. I guess it was a good guess. It was a good guess. I'd never met him. I wish I had.
Maybe you can one day.
Yeah.
He's alive.
Interesting. Do you know the funny thing? The book I got, his Strike, how I got that's one of the few books that the organization gave me. They got it. I don't know how they got it, but they did.
So you're at this place, and this is where you have this custom-made giant stainless steel vessel as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're just asking for more and more. Presumably they're having no trouble selling this.
Right. No, in the end, I remember they were dumb enough to tell me what they were selling it for. They were selling it for $7 a piece at a minimum of 3,500 hits per each drop off. So in other words, if I say I produced only 2,200, I would not deliver that until I did another batch and was able to have at least 3,500. So if you do the math on that, that's what they were making every week or 2 weeks. Let's say 10 days. Let's say every 10 days, that's what they were making. It's not exorbitant amount, but it's not chump change.
Yeah. And is this domestically sold? Is it going?
Again, I was delivering everything to gyms, which is ridiculous if you ask me. So here I am, producing, collecting all the and I had storage units in Houston, San Antonio, and Austin because I kept the chemicals separate. So if I got caught, you don't see all the chemicals. You know, they don't see all three of the they don't see all three of them. We know what you're making. You know, if I only get caught with glacial acetic, well, what's that going to do? Nothing.
Right.
So I had different locations. So when I would run out of something, guess what I had to do on my days off? Drive to Houston. I would drive San Antonio to Houston to Austin all in one day, all the time.
So this is a weird lifestyle. Like, what are you telling friends, family?
I didn't have any friends. I had one friend that knew. He was my best friend. He passed away last year, and to my dying day, I regret what happened to him or how he got involved in this at all. He was one of those people that saw what I was doing and was kind of like, "Hey, cut me in. I want in. Like, why are you keeping me out of the loop?" And at this point, I had already said, "You don't want anything to do with these people. Just trust me. Just trust me." And he didn't listen. And he had actually helped me move some furniture into my apartment when I was going to college. He showed up there uninvited, and the people that I worked for were watching my apartment, and they came in through the door immediately after and proceeded to beat the living fuck out of him and threatened me and him. And it took us actually to a construction site where there was a hole dug, and they threatened to kill us.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's pretty intense shit. And at that point, because they had heard he wanted in, he passed away last year in August. Yeah, it scared the shit out of us. And at that point, he was now my gopher, which, by the way, he was horrible at it. And I was stuck with him. And they made him rent the house in Austin, and they let him live there because he was my gopher. And then the house in Bastrop is pretty much where I lived, back and forth. But he was supposed to be my gopher, which, like I said, it was one of the worst situations ever, because now I felt responsible for another human being, not just my own stuff.
So now I think I'm better understanding, because I think you're not a complaining type, it seems like, and maybe you were understating how bad this situation was. I didn't realize that they were threatening to kill you. I thought this was like medium pressure. So you're under frightening, extremely intense pressure.
There at the end, before everything was done, I used to sleep under a table with a shotgun with a bedroll, fake bedroll, in case they came looking for me, that I would at least have a fighting chance.
Shit. Okay. So this is actually how you first reached out to me. You said there is an unsavory criminal element to a lot of this that you don't really talk about, and you're totally right. I don't talk about it, maybe because I romanticize clandestine chemistry so much, and I like chemistry, and because I usually am interviewing these people that have a more romantic, idealistic connection to the synthesis of psychoactive drugs. I think psychedelics in particular tend to select for people that have this almost religious connection to what they're doing. And so we're going to kill you if you don't make drugs aspect is one that I actually don't encounter. Maybe this is some selection bias on my part, because I feel like that side of it is often what people think it's like from shows like Breaking Bad or whatever. But yeah, it sounds like you were very much in that.
At times, like I said, they were probably master manipulators. They would almost be bipolar in ways. They would have extreme violence and extreme things like that, and then we'd go out of town together and go out. You know what I mean? We go do things together, and it was like nothing had ever happened. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like it was like that all the time, every day.
Right. And were you thinking, were they pressuring you to do other stuff? Where they're like, maybe you can make methamphetamine, maybe you can make fentanyl, maybe no.
They wanted no part of that world.
Not even MDMA.
Oh, if I could have made MDMA, they would have been happy, but they didn't care enough for me to. They were selling as much as they could get rid of as fast as I can make it.
Right.
So what was the incentive? Plus the 85 milligrams versus 120, you lose a little bit of financial viability right there, just by volume.
Right. And were you thinking, maybe it would be cool to make mescaline or 2CB or LSD?
In fact, I did make TMA2.
Oh, nice.
TMA, in fact, I was looking for. I had some. I haven't taken it. I've kind of been scared to take it. I have some. I could not find it.
I've never taken it either, crazily.
I've made it. I've helped made it twice, and I've never taken it. I don't know why I haven't taken it. I just kind of scared. I don't know.
Yeah, I would love to. It's one of the classics that I haven't tried.
The TMA2?
Yeah.
I want to do the 2CB. That's the one I want to try.
It's great, yeah. It's really good.
Because I looked into the 2CB thing, and I was like, damn it, I can't get 2,5-benzene halide, methyloxy 2,5-benzene halide. I can't get it. Couldn't get it.
2,5-dimethyloxybenzaldehyde?
From what I understand, you have to be a lab to get it. I think when I was doing the research on it, that China wasn't doing that yet.
So you're continuing to do this stuff outside of Austin, and pretty much same route over and over again.
Right. And it was boring.
More and more, and then what?
And in the end, I think I ended up having almost 18 pipe bombs to go at once. And I had a huge, oil bath with a propane burner. That was my oil bath. Now, you put 18 on them at once. I would get the same route over and over again, but I would just add more to try to produce more. And in the end, I was probably making on average about 2,400 every batch. Every batch. And in the beginning, it would take me, and I don't know how they didn't notice this, to be honest with you. In the beginning, it would take me about 3 to 5 days to make that. There at the end, it was taking me 7 to 9 days because I was so frustrated. And I was so burnt out on it. I just didn't care anymore. And I was like, whatever, I'm just going to take forever. I would go to the lab and I would take a day off. Wouldn't do shit.
Would you use the MDA frequently?
Occasionally. It got old. It got to the point where I didn't want to do it. It wasn't fun because I didn't want to do it by myself. There's no fun in that.
Right.
Did I use it on occasion? Sure. Sometimes out of boredom. But yeah, here I'm in Austin doing that route, and that's about when I start looking at other possibilities because I'm so frustrated because they keep upping the ante by saying, "Oh, go get this more chemicals because I want you to make 300,000, no 400,000, 600,000, a million." In the end, it being a million. I don't remember the number incrementally that they said, but in the end, it was a fucking million. And my heart just just sink lower, lower, and lower. I'm like, fuck. So at this point, I've got a gopher that I'm responsible for. He's my best friend, oldest friend, who, by the way, his family is connected to the judgeships in Texas. So there's another issue with that. His mother's a judge, and his grandfather's the chief justice of the federal system.
Well, that might be a good thing.
Yeah, that's probably why he didn't get killed.
Yeah.
Looking, seriously. In fact, I have a letter from his mother in here. She wrote a letter to the courts on my behalf.
Was he a bad gopher?
Oh, he's horrible. He's a severe alcoholic and would disappear from time to time. And when he would disappear, I would have to shut the lab down and go move everything into storage by myself, which that shit's heavy. When you got Rubbermaid cases full of stuff, I'd have to shut, and he would just disappear because he's an alcoholic, and then it would just get ugly. And they would come find him and beat the fuck out of him, and it would start all over again.
And he was miserable as well.
Oh, he was probably suicidal. And I felt responsible for him, so I found a way to get him out, and I got him out.
How'd you get him out?
He got a job offer for a company that his dad worked for, and I know he needed to take it and get him out. So what I did was, and it wasn't a stretch, I would constantly complain that he was fucking useless for me, and I need somebody who can do it. I said I'd rather do this shit myself, and I complained and I complained and I complained. Please let me get rid of him. I can't fucking take it anymore. He's worthless. And yes, I would say things like that, but I did it for his own benefit.
Right. Yeah.
And eventually they relented. And then they went and took him aside and had a very long conversation with him, just him and them. And I found out later on it was basically, you say a freaking word about anything, that whole applies.
Yeah.
So I got him out. It took about a year. And I finally got him out, and then I didn't see him again for a long time, which was I felt a lot better having got him out.
Yeah.
Now I had to work on me. The house in Bastrop's in his name, so I have to move again because he can't know where it is. The organization got me a piece of property that I don't know how they got. I don't know where they found it. That's not my control. It was in Frio County, Texas, about 45 minutes south of San Antonio. On 82 acres of land, shit land. I mean, just dirt red. You couldn't grow anything on it. I doubt even cattle would work on there. It was just shit land. So I don't think they paid that much for it. So I get out there, they show it to me. The only time they ever went out there, and they show me the property. And it's like a mobile home with a house with a slab combined. Half of it was like a slab house, half of it was a mobile house, like a mobile home, which great, wonderful. So I get that thing going. Here's another thing. I had to move again all by myself. Furniture, couches, lab equipment, vacuums, you name it. Tanks. Dude, in the end, I started getting HBR in 90-pound tanks, 90 pounds of HBR. The tank wasn't 90 pounds. It's 90 pounds of HBR. That freaking tank's 300 pounds. With all the stain, the metal.
Yeah.
I had to move these things by myself. A pain in the ass.
Probably a little frightening as well.
I don't even know that bothered me that much.
Yeah.
I think I had other issues going on. But, and I got that up and running. It didn't I wasn't allowed to take very long. And I remember once it got up and running, things got worse because I was so asked to produce or made to produce, however you want to word it, that I didn't even get time off as much as I needed. I started dating this girl, You know, she had an apartment in San Antonio. One of my days off, I'd go see her. I impregnate her. We move in together, but basically I'm gone 2-3 weeks out of every month. She's not stupid. You know what I mean? Maybe I didn't spell it out, but she's not stupid.
Yeah.
You can't hide things like that from people you love and live with.
Right.
And we have a child.
What were you saying to her?
Originally, I was telling her I was doing construction. I worked out of town, but she's not stupid. And then she used to make fun of the scent that I smelled like root beer all the time. She knew. She didn't. Maybe she didn't know to the level I was doing it, but she knew. So here I have got a child on the way, which added to my stress level. And I've got these people breathing down my neck. I remember one time I went out there in the lab, I worked for 52 days straight by myself. I got a little weird. Being by yourself for that many days, you get a little weird.
What was happening?
I was convinced that the vibrations of the vacuum pumps, because they were on well, that I could hear like radio sounds through them. I was like, I could hear it. I was just like, and like I was just talking to myself all the time. You know, I was like, there was nobody there. You know, I was talking to myself. I know 50 days, hey, doesn't sound like much, but when you're out on a piece of land under high stress, dude, I wanted to get a motorcycle that I could go ride on the land, at least go do something while I'm out there. No, you get hurt, you won't be able to work.
And they knew that you had a girlfriend as well, I imagine. Yeah.
They had to meet her.
And how did you explain who these people were to her?
That's a tough one to answer because I think she played stupid too. Do you know what I mean? Like she didn't have to work. I paid all the bills. We drove nice cars. We actually went out to Arizona together, her and I, and went and ate at Sammy's restaurant, Uncle Sal's. It's owned by his son. And we went out there and we had dinner. And I remember the waitress bringing the check. And the people I'm with said, oh, we don't pay here. And the lady just backed away quietly. And I remember Sarah, her name's Sarah, she whispers in my ear, who the fuck are these people? You know, it's just like, they look the part. They act the part. If it walks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Right.
I mean, right down to the track suits and gym shorts. And I'm being serious. I remember on my days off, I had to be at Starbucks every day at like 6:30 in the morning to have conversations about what I was going to do today. On my days off, like when I was in town.
So you must have been their cash cow. I mean, they must have had a lot invested in you to be this interested in control and surveillance.
Yeah. I would imagine. I did the math once. I don't see why they did it. I don't really understand it because they were already millionaires from what I understood. They already had millions of dollars. I know for a fact they do. Why? Why would you keep doing stuff like this?
Yeah.
I don't see that. It has to be about power. It can't be just for the money.
And they, I assume, don't have any kind of social interest in like we're making the world a better place.
Oh, no, not at all. No. Not at all.
Yeah.
No.
So you've got a girlfriend, a child.
Right.
More pressure. Where do things go from there?
My stress level gets through the roof that I actually contact my buddy who works at the University of Texas, Mr. Ed, and I ask for his help. And I explain to him what's going on. And hey, I need help to get these people out, get out from underneath these people. The only way it's going to happen is if I just knock this out. And the only way that's going to happen is if I change routes. It's not going to happen the bromosaprol isopropyl ammonia route. That's not going to happen. You know, I'm not doing this for 10 years. So I actually invited him out to my lab. I let him come out there.
Without telling them, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And he has a methamphetamine addiction, and it drove me freaking crazy. Every day he'd wake up, go down to the dollar store, buy dollar pills, whatever, pseudoephedrine or ephedrine, and he would take my ammonia tanks and turn them upside down with sodium and make methamphetamine in 15, 20 minutes. And he would, I swear to God, he would do it every day. Every day.
Because you didn't want to do a big batch. You liked the hot off the griddle.
I don't know. You'd have to ask him. I don't know. I know that he would clog up all my equipment, and I would get pissed. And one time I got really mad at him. I said, you came here to help me to get away from this. When are you going to start helping me with that?
So he was not.
He's not. It was a pain in my ass. It was just another added thing.
But you were going to pursue a different route. What was the?
I just started pursuing it on my own.
Yeah. And what route was that?
The sodium azide, bromosaprol, sodium azide with butylamine, or aliquot 336 with magnesium.
Okay.
That's that route I was telling you about with the whole pH issue and the filtration issue. I got it to work. I mean, I did produce it. It worked. But I could never get the filtration issue down. And then my buddy, Mr. Ed, he actually asked me one time, I said, what the fuck is wrong? Why can't I get this figured out? And you know what he said to me? And he was dead right. The chemistry's not the problem. You are. You're under so much stress, you can't think straight. And he was right. I couldn't focus and solve problems that I probably would have been able to do a year earlier because of the stress level. I was stressed out. Like, I'll be honest with you, when I finally was arrested, I was the happiest person in jail. I was fucking happy. I really was. I was happier there than I was being under this thumb.
So tell me about the final period. So you're doing
and I'm just going to say this here. There's some things at the end of this that I don't want to be on the recording.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'm going to go through it anyway.
Okay. So
And
maybe
you'll understand in a minute.
Okay. So and just to be clear, so you'd done small scale azide route in Austin, and then you were trying to scale it up in an effort to make 1 million doses.
I had started it in Austin, and I got it to work, proved the chemistry, and thought that I could figure out the problems with the filtration. The magnesium issue was the first one issue. I got that hurdle. I remember I told you I switched from magnesium filings that I bought from a chemical supply house to raw magnesium from striker pads with a Dremel. It worked way better. For some reason, anyway, it doesn't matter. The newer magnesium worked, it reacted quicker, better, more controllable for the reaction versus magnesium turnings from a chemical supply house. So I solved that issue for the most part. And then I figured that I would get the other part solved with the help of my buddy. Did not happen. He never had any interest in. He would give me pointers like, hey, go try this. Hey, go try this. He had more interest in getting high and doing meth every day. Yeah. And it drove me freaking batshit crazy. Because I'm not saying I've not ever done meth, because I have, but it's not my thing. If I had to be honest, opiates would be more my thing. Yeah. I prefer more opiate. I like painkillers more. Right. I like to sleep. Yeah. I don't like to be up for days. Yeah. Yeah. That lifestyle seems. I can't do it. Yeah. And I like to eat. I'm a foodie. I love to eat. So, but yeah. And then here's where I'm getting to it. And it may surprise you. This is February of 2000. I remember it like it was yesterday. I got a phone call from Berto. And then my cell phone only worked while I was standing on the fence way off the property. I'm way the hell out in the middle of nowhere. And it only worked, and we only called at certain times of the day, and I had to be at that post, at that time, whatever. And it was twice a day or once a day, whatever. Something happened. I can't really recall what exactly happened, but something happened, and he said to me, I hope you love your children. And I'll never forget it. I said, what did you say? He said, you heard me. And I sat quietly and I said, okay. And I sat for a while. He hung up, whatever. And I thought for a while, my children don't deserve this. I know I had some sodium cyanide, and I made 4 caps of sodium cyanide, and I am not a violent man. And I had a shotgun. And I changed my clothes, just like Breaking Bad. I used to get naked in between the truck and in the house. And I loaded up that shotgun to go kill him. And I got halfway back to San Antonio, and he called me on my phone, and he goes, what are you doing? Coming to see you. why? You didn't, there's no meeting today. No, we need to talk. He realized at that moment he overstepped his bounds at some level. He realized he crossed the line. And he talked me down, like he like a pod, quietly calmed me down. And I turned around. I went back. I had 4 sodium cyanide in my pills. I was going to kill him and kill myself. That's the only out I saw. And I told myself later that day that if I ever have another day like today, I'm walking. That's it. I'm done. I'm just going to walk away.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, roughly, Mr. Ed shows up at my house with a newspaper. Sammy the Bull Gravano just got busted for ecstasy bust. Here's your fucking out. It was correct. And here's why. I knew he was part of the group. I knew he was above the people I worked for. I don't know what the exact affiliation was. I never met the man. They asked if I wanted to meet him when I was in Arizona. I said no. I was at his place of residence. I went to one residence that was affiliated with them. I went to one restaurant that he owned and one business that he owned. I never saw anybody important. And this comes out later. I said, you know what? The fact that he's been busted, and he'd been busted days earlier, several days earlier, and they didn't tell me, and I talked to them every day. Why not? My thinking was, I'm going to be their fucking pawn. I'm going to be their pawn to use to help him out now. Do you know what I mean? That was my thinking.
Yeah.
I said, I've had enough. And I had known somebody that had worked, he did some state's evidence at one point. I knew somebody who had done that.
Yeah.
And I called them. And I said, I need the name of the person you work for, like the DEA. And they gave me the number. And actually, it wasn't DEA. It was Department of Public Safety, Texas. His name was O'Rourke. I remember very well because he ended up lying to me. Like the whole judicial system fucked me too over. They were just as bad as the people I was working for at some level. And I called him, and I met him at a gas station not too far from the lab. I brought him a couple pills. I said, "Do you know anything about these?" He said, "Yeah, I've seen them." I said, "Well," I've got a lab you can have. I said, "But there's only one condition." And I said, "I don't mind, and it isn't me going to jail. I want you to put me in jail. I want you to put me in jail. You cannot find the people who are responsible for the lab through me." I said, "I don't give a fuck if you find them, but you're not going to get them through me. That's the one condition I have. Because as long as I'm sitting in jail and my mouth is shut, my family is safe."
But wouldn't the deal require you to provide information on them?
Not originally, no. In fact, it's in this paperwork. That was the original agreement, and I agreed to 36 months in prison. That was the original agreement. He called the wrong prosecutor in the wrong district of Texas and had me talk to them on the phone. "Oh, yeah, I agree to that." I was in San Antonio's Southern District, or Western District, not Southern District in Corpus. He called the wrong one, and he did it on purpose. So when I was in the Fed system, the prosecution looked at that, because it was on a piece of paper, said, "I don't have to honor this," and tore it up.
Oh, my God.
And I had 4 bond hearings in the feds, and that was 20 to life, 20 to life, 20 to life, 20 to life. No bond. I had $1 million cash bond in the state. I was in state custody for a week in solitary confinement. They said because they didn't want me warning anybody. And yeah, it's so stupid. Some of it, but yeah, in the end, what happened? My buddy, Mr. Ed, who's also the same person that had worked with the DEA before, he's whatever.
Yeah.
He's still my friend. He's still a good human being. That's another issue for him and somebody else.
Right.
He folded like a fucking lawn chair. They just gave him everything. They knew within 1 week everything that the people, because he knew who these people were. He'd heard of them.
Yeah.
And what they did was when they picked me up from state custody, I knew they knew because they said things like, "Oh yeah, what's that guy, Pat? What's his last name? Starts with a P, that guy you work for?" And I said, I repeated myself again, "I hope you get who you're looking for. You just can't get it through me. I'm not going to do this." And I sat there. And I sat there for months and months and months. in federal custody. And they picked up the other people, and they all got bonded in and out with money, and they didn't spend one day in jail. And I just sat there, but my family was safe.
So you turned yourself in, didn't provide the names of the people who were funding the operation,
Nope.
But they knew that your friend knew, and he was the one who...
And it's in this paperwork. It's one of the things I said that I thought, and it's in there. It says what he did.
Yeah.
It says he's CI1, but I know who it is by the information.
Yeah. And he's in prison now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in prison.
Federal detention.
Federal detention.
It's a little different, but not much.
And you know that the financiers are...
Oh, they're madly searching for me. Madly. Let's put it this way. I had a dirty mob organization lawyer that showed up at my jail cell in Frio County within hours of my arrest, that he was there so fast that they wanted to put him in front of the grand jury. They wanted to know why he knew where I was.
Wow.
Only somebody who was involved would have known where I was. It hadn't made the news yet. He was there within hours.
So they maybe even had people on the inside.
I think the people I worked for called him and said, "Hey, this is where the place was. Find him."
I see. Yeah.
Because he was there within hours.
So how did they know you were gone? That you just stopped? You were MIA.
I shut my phone off.
And you think they showed up? And what did you do with the lab? Was it just...
I left it as is. I actually cleaned up as much as I could because it was a little bit dirty. I was a little bit embarrassed. I cleaned up. And then I asked Mr. Ed if he wanted anything. I said, "You can take as much as you want on your back and carry it out of here." And he took a lot of shit. He took some vacuum pumps and a lot of glass. So you can have as much as you want. I don't give a fuck. I don't want nothing to do with it. And here's the one thing that bit me in the ass, which I wish it hadn't happened, is I had a bunch of grenades and magnesium phosphorus grenades, flashbang grenades, and some other types, and I had them jokingly next to toluene cans. They weren't tripwired, but to hear the story in there, They said I was a terrorist, and that's one of the reasons I couldn't get bond, because of the grenades, and I would have killed multiple people if they had come through there and tripwired it. How am I gonna kill multiple people if I just gave it to you? Yes, when they came in and I gave it to them, I said, "Hold on a minute. Let me go move something. Don't go kicking stuff around."
You're saying as a joke you had grenades?
I wasn't a joke. I guess the original thinking was, yes, if someone came in there, and my stupid thinking at the time was I had some magnesium phosphorus grenades that were sitting next to a toluene can. They weren't tripwired to it. They weren't taped to it.
Right.
They weren't even, pin wasn't pulled. It was just sitting there.
But it was the idea that you could destroy all the evidence.
Right.
Yeah.
At the time, but looking back, I would never have done. I mean, I could have hurt people.
Right.
Well.
Yeah.
No.
So take me through the legal dimensions. What happened then?
Okay. I'm in state custody for 7 days and in solitary confinement. So I don't warn anybody, whatever. Oh, here, I have to back up one small thing. When they take the lab over, I mean, I'm talking 50 people show up to do this bust at this point. DEA's there, GPS is there, and media shows up. The idiots left me in a room by myself, didn't even handcuff me, and I just go look. I look outside, there's the media. I'm standing there with no handcuffs on. And then when they're not quite finished processing, they came to me and they said, "Who runs this lab? I want to know right now." I said, "I already told you, I'm not going to tell you. I can't help you." I said, "I hope you find them, but I can't help you." And they said, "You know what we're going to do? We're going to cut you loose, see how long you last."
Oh.
I said, "Go fuck yourself. Cut me loose then. Cut me loose." Yeah, that was pretty harsh of them to say that. They didn't do it, but they even threatened with that. And another thing they threatened, I actually called the only cell phone I couldn't call Sarah and Warner, so I called the mother of my other child, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to go away for a while. Tell my son I love him." they used that against me.
That you made this call?
Just, yeah. They went to Sarah when they found out where I lived through some paperwork, and he said, "Oh, he didn't call you, did he? Tried to drive a wedge."
Ugh. It's unbelievable how creepy this stuff is. When you said that law enforcement was just as bad as the criminal
it gets worse.
operation.
It gets way worse.
Yeah.
Once I'm in the feds, which took about a week, I'm in downtown San Antonio federal detention. Somehow I get wind that they want to talk to me. And I said, "Oh, you can talk to me all you want. I'm not going to help you." And that's when they took that note, and it said, it was on a little piece, like this big, it wasn't even a full-size piece of paper. Oh, 36 months, give up the land. They offered me $40,000 to give up the names. They were going to pay me cash.
What?
$40,000.
I didn't even know they could do that.
I didn't either. I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't accept it, so I don't know. I said no. I don't know. Doesn't sound right to me either. They offered me $40,000 cash if I would give up the names. This was in the first week. They wanted something to happen quick or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I said no. I'm not going to help you. I'm sorry. I will not help you. I didn't say anything about anybody, even though they knew who it was, and I don't know how long it took to pick other people up or what. But I figured the dominoes are falling from Phoenix, and now from this end too. It's only a matter of time. So I sat there and for months and months. And I got a strange money order one day for a few $100s. I have an idea who it was from one of the people. They thought, "Oh, he's sitting there being quiet," because they know I'm being quiet. I haven't said.
Oh, it's like a little thank you.
I guess. No one else will send me that kind of money. And there's one other thing that they found out when they did raid the house of one of them. In their safe, they found a notepad with my social security number, driver's license number, and the location of my brother and mother.
Oof.
And so because of my thing, I'm entitled to a new social security number. I never took it. I never did it, but I'm entitled to one.
Wow. Holy shit.
It's a heavy case. It was my only way out. It was never going to end. And if I'm being completely honest, there at the end, I was probably fairly suicidal myself. There's a few times I took that shotgun and walked down a little creek. It was I'm about done with this shit. And the fact is, I think they even knew that. And the thing about this also, in the end, you say I did make $300,000 for them. I know how much exactly I made for them. It's about 16 kilos, so 160,000, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. I probably gave away a kilo's worth at least. I had more ecstasy than I had money, and I would give it away like candy to anyone who was anyone that I knew who would benefit from it. Here you go. Never got to enjoy it with them, which sucked, but I gave away a shit ton. I mean, at least a kilo. I'm proud of that one. One thing I do want to kick my own ass for is I really kept telling myself, make a kilo and bury it, and I didn't do it. I said to do it to myself. I kept saying, do that. It would have been easy to make an extra kilo on the side and just go bury it. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the feds, they're so dumb sometimes. Some of the things they came at me with. They came at me and they said, they knew that I went to Arizona because they talked to Sarah, and they wanted to know what I did in Arizona. And I said, I don't know anything about Arizona, and I didn't. Just because I was there doesn't mean I knew anything.
Right.
So they, you didn't get the picture I sent you with me and the DEA jet?
No.
Oh, that's hilarious. Here's a hydrogenation chamber.
That's awesome.
It had a heating element, 2 parts, one on the bottom and one on the top with a rheostat. And then see the top had a bolt welded to it and had another bolt that threaded on it. And then that bolt had a very fine thread in the center of it, which the thermocouple attached to.
That's awesome.
And like I said, it was 316, so it was non-magnetic. You could put a stir plate underneath the bottom and stir it at the same time. I thought it would help the reaction for agitation.
Yeah.
And then that's the jet. It's a turbojet prop, but that's a DEA that flew me from.
That's you?
Yeah. Look how young I am.
Wow.
Yeah, the DEA flew me from San Antonio, Texas to Scottsdale, Arizona. And this is a funny story, and I don't care if you added in there. I find this hilarious. They did not. I fly into Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'm in shackles and, a little tight like this. And I'm in, Scottsdale, Arizona is a private airport. It's not like a major airport. It's a small airport right outside of Phoenix, or in Phoenix, basically. So we're in a desert, so I thought I'd have a little fun. I start running a little around like this, and I'm in front of them. I say, all right, I'll show you guys where the dead bodies are in the desert. All loud so other people could hear me while I'm being trailed by, 15 police officers. And they did not find that funny at all. I found it hilarious. Because, this is a joke. I don't know any bodies in the desert. They did not find it funny. But anyway, I was out in Arizona for a week, and it sucked. But in the end, I got credit for it. And you know what they figured out? I don't know shit. There was buffers between me and other people. The people they were after at this point, they wanted to know the affiliation between the people I worked with for and Sammy. I didn't know what the relationship was. To this day, do I know for sure? Nope, I don't.
Yeah.
I never saw him, never met him. Did I hear his name a lot? I sure did. Do I think that at some level the people I worked for were showing off? Probably. In their own little way, their own little world, yeah. He said his name was Jimmy and something else I didn't say. And they used to he said it was so funny how much that he would allow him to put his hands on him. I don't know why he would say that, but because Al's huge. Sammy's not very big. He's about my height.
And so what about, there was a trial?
No, in the end, I pled out to the 36 months. But here's the crazy thing is, all four of my bond hearings, they said 20 to life, 20 to life, 20 to life, which means they weren't honoring that agreement.
But you did get the 36
And
months.
in the end, I did, yes.
Okay. So
and then but I didn't even have to do the full 36 because this is a weird one. I was looking for it in there. It's not in there. I donated my vacuum pump and my library of books to a high school, and they knocked off 4 months for that.
Your collection of books on lock picking and explosives.
No. The reference books only.
Okay.
Just the reference books. They didn't want those. I had a large, and I mean a very large collection. I had about 3 Rubbermaids, big ones, the big ones, full of books.
What happened to them?
I donated them to a high school.
Oh, but what about the ones that were?
I don't know.
Oh, I see.
They were going to get it anyway. It didn't matter, so I might as well just. And then I signed over my truck. I signed over the brand new Suburban. Signed over the books and the vacuum pump. And I got 4 months knocked off for that.
And do they take all of your money?
I didn't have any money.
You weren't getting paid?
They owed me $75,000 at the point when this all happened. I'm never going to get it. I was never going to. In fact, I ran into, in court one day, I ran into Pat. And he asked if I would testify on his behalf for mitigating circumstances. I said, sure, give me my $75,000 you owe me. Never heard from him again.
So you were not making any money?
I had all my bills were paid, and I had a little money in my pocket, a few $100s at any given moment, maybe $1,000. Not enough to be doing this for a living.
Oh, so you were really in a bad situation.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed that at the very least you were getting...
Yes, $1 a hit, and 100-something thousand. That they owed me $75,000 in the end. I did this for almost 3 years. Do the math. I spent all of that along the way. And they owe me let's say I made 160,000 hits for them, minus 75,000. You're looking at $90,000 over 3 years. I'm making $30,000 a year doing this. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's looking back, I don't see how they didn't see this was inevitable. How do you pressure somebody that long and not have something pop? Something's got to give at some point. Do I regret what I did at some level? Yeah, I do, actually. I wish I hadn't come to that. I wish someone hadn't threatened my children. I wish I hadn't loaded up a shotgun to go kill somebody. I'm not a violent person. I don't like violence. I'm not a violent human being. I don't want anything to do with that kind of stuff.
And in prison, what was that like?
Probably the happiest I'd been in years. Honestly, I could talk to people again. I could talk to people about things I enjoyed. And chemistry became fun again, believe it or not, because I met a bunch of people in there that liked things like I liked.
Other clandestine chemists.
There was a lot of meth cooks in there. I was the only ecstasy cook or MDA cook, which kind of gave me some clout. They acted like I knew chemistry, which I didn't tell them I didn't, but I let them think that. You know what I mean? You know what's funny? There is some routes to some methamphetamines that I learned, and I actually saw Mr. Ed do it, and it is true, and it's an interesting one. There's the red phosphorus iodine reduction route, which calls for hydroiodic acid reduction of ephedrine or pseudoephedrine, depending on which one you have. You can do it with almost no water present, which the iodine liquefies, and the reaction can take place over 15 minutes versus 24 hours, or 8-hour cook in a normal reflux. And it works. It really works. And it's crazy because I've seen it done in front of me and been partaking in it. And there's another one that's really weird. You take pseudoephedrine and ephedrine both, and you do the cook with them both. And it is the strongest, and they call it super dope. And people in jail know about it. And everybody came about it the same way. They didn't have enough ephedrine to do the reaction. They didn't have enough pseudoephedrine to do the reaction, but they had enough between the two. And so they threw them together and they did the reaction. I don't know the chemistry behind it, but everybody in jail knows about it. Everybody, they call it super dope.
Huh.
And I don't know what, I've tried it. It is, I did a bump one time. All my hair stood up.
Wow. Huh.
You know, and it kind of scared me. It was that strong. Like, it scared the shit out of me. Like, I was like, no, thank you.
Interesting.
But yeah, and everybody in there, like all the dope cooks, whatever you call them, they said, yep. And the yields are horrible. Like a normal yield for that reaction is like 35%, I think 30, 45%. The yield is 10%. It's horrible. So in other words, no one would ever do that to make money. So it stays in that little spot where only people who have come about it accidentally know about.
Well, I think that's one of the ironies of the efforts to control manufacture of methamphetamine is that people made a big deal out of these small scale shake and bake meth operations. But the reality is that there is something to be said for making your own drugs because it limits your use, it limits distribution. Whereas if everything's being made in massive labs in Latin America and then shipped into the United States, people have no limit. It's much cheaper. You don't have any personal involvement. It's kind of like the difference between growing your own food and getting fast food.
Sure. One thing I actually said to a DEA agent one time, I said, I don't understand what the problem is for people who just want to make drugs and enjoy drugs and explore stuff. And he actually said to me, he says, we don't care about those people. I'm not the people we're after. And I think he was being genuine. He was one of the nicer DEA agents, one that didn't seem to fuck me over.
Do you remember any of their names? Were there any DEA chemists that you dealt with?
No, but one of the things when I did eventually have to, what they call debrief, which is acceptance of responsibility, they go through the chemistry with you and ask you questions, because if you can answer the questions correctly, they know you're not lying.
Yeah.
One of the questions they asked me, which I found very funny, was they asked me, how did I deal with the tar from the reactions of the bromosaffrol route, And I said, well, because they were such a pain in the ass to get them out of the flask at the end, I came up with the idea that it was liquid once, so it could be liquid again. Because once it dried in there, you take sulfuric acid and wash and beat it up, and it would take you hours to clean one flask. It was almost better to throw it away and start again.
Right.
So what I figured out was, if you take them and put them in the oven and you turn your flask upside down and you turn that thing all the way up and you let it sit there for about an hour or two, it'll liquefy again and it'll just drop out. That's how I cleaned them.
Huh. That's interesting.
One that was really cool, and this goes back to the bromo part, and I found out about this by accident, and it works. Once I figured this out, it helped things a lot. Once you do the bromosaffrol route, and you do your washes, and I used a 5-gallon bucket, because I was brominating about 1,000 mils at a time.
Yeah,
that's what I needed to get 250, 25%. So at the end, if you took that bromo, and I said this earlier, but if you took that bromosaffrol crude form and you put it in the fridge at its coldest temperature and you leave it for a week, it literally will turn from opaque, like eggplant, to like a reddish to a yellow. It will almost look like it's been distilled if you give it enough time. And the temperature matters, because I've left it in. How I came about it was I literally was in a hurry, and I had just brominated some stuff, and I didn't know where to stash the set funnel. So I just stuck it in the fridge and came back a week later and looked at it, and I was like, holy shit.
Interesting.
Yeah, so if you would do that a week in advance, you could have really good, clean bromo saffron without distilling it, which is a bonus because of the cleavage issue, which I did eventually distill it, but I had 2 more cleavages, 2 more explosions. And they're nasty. They're straight up nasty. I mean, talk about billowing smoke.
And is the smoke HBR or bromine?
It's heavy. It's black.
Oh, wow.
It's black. It's like it's not black, but it's dark gray. And like I said, the one time that I had to deal with it because of the other explosions, I just left. I'm like, I'm not gonna breathe that in.
Right.
The first one that happened, I did not have a full face respirator yet, and I had to try to clean up my mess. And I ran in there and dealt with shit and ran back out, back and forth. And then the next day, I pissed bright fucking orange.
Oof.
I'm sure I've got some free radicals running around in me.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary.
And then, so you did this time in prison.
Right. In the end, I actually I got sentenced to 36 months originally. They lowered it down to 30 in the end. I did almost 9 months in federal detention. They let me bond out finally because they got everything they wanted. They bonded me. Let me bond out. I had to go report to FMC Fort Worth Federal Medical Camp, and I was sitting at my brother's house in Houston, and I get a phone call from my lawyer, and he says, "You don't have to report." So in the end, I had to do 9 months.
Oh.
He goes, "You don't have to report." I said, "Shut the fuck up." He's like, "No, for real." My buddy, my best friend, was on his way from San Antonio to take me on a snowboard trip before I went to turn myself in. We were going to go snowboarding. And I was like, I didn't have to go. And he said the reason was, they said, I may not have told them what they wanted to hear, but what I did tell them was the truth. And that's what they said.
Huh.
In the end, they wanted me to testify against my friend whose family's connected to the judgeship. And they said that if I didn't, that I would null and void my 36 months. And I said, I'm not going to help you. I'm not. And I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to help you. He got the shit beat out of him multiple times and never made a penny. He doesn't deserve that. And
Yeah.
They didn't do anything about it. That's some heavy shit.
It's really heavy.
I didn't know that I was going to be able to say all this today.
I really appreciate it. I mean, I think it's a very valuable perspective. I actually don't think I've ever spoken to somebody in your situation before, or that had a situation like that.
Being honest, I think most people in my predicament, or people who do stuff, go down this road, or like you said, are in love with the chemistry and are smart enough to keep it to themselves and learn on their own and do it for themselves, versus delusions of grandeur. Oh, I'm gonna be connected with a bunch of idiots that act in a certain way. See what I'm saying? That the route that I went is probably not the norm for that type of molecule.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
Are there other chemistry aspects or any other things that you think people listening to this should know about? Cautionary things, anything?
One was interesting was the methylamine bubbler. That one was interesting. I was trying to make methylamine I found a route to make methylamine using nitromethane, methanol, and aluminum amalgam, similar to the MDMA. But instead of doing a whole thing in there, which would have made more sense, it's a very similar setup. I'm trying to remember this correctly. You have to amalgamate the aluminum. I had to distill nitromethane and methanol from RC fuel, which, by the way, is not fun because it bumps. That nitromethane bumps, and it's pretty scary when it does, because you're like,
right,
that's nitromethane, and it goes,
yeah.
And so, but once you have those isolated, and then you have to get the lubricant out of it, and how you get that out is also, by the way, put all that stuff in a fridge and a set funnel and let it get cold as shit, and the lubricant will fall out.
Uh-huh.
In the nitromethane, methanol, RC fuel.
Yeah.
That's how you get the lubricant out.
Got
But
it.
then you distill your nitromethane, methanol. You can use them again, but you get them separated. You got your stuff going. You amalgamate your aluminum, and you put it all in there. I'm trying to remember exactly. You heat it up slowly, and as you heat it up, and the reaction goes, and you have it very similar setup to a hydrochloric acid bubbler with a pipette and a drying tube, and it actually is bubbling methylamine gas off the top
Right,
of that reaction. And so I'm catching it in an ice cold IPA. And that's how I made methylamine and made MDMA out there in a pipe bomb.
Oh, so you did make MDMA.
For personal use. Yeah, I didn't ever make enough to do any money or even, no.
I
Just
see.
personal.
Yeah,
And I don't even think it made that much, maybe 10 grams.
right.
Not a lot.
And other chemistry things.
The TMA2, I'm trying to remember and this is weak because the starting point was calamus oil for the TMA2. And I think I don't know if I think Firmamide was used for the amphetamine portion of it. I think is how it was done.
What is
Is it Firmamide? I may not be pronouncing that correctly. It's another way to produce an amphetamine, not, I'd have to look it up.
Do you remember what chemicals are involved?
It wasn't my bag. I was part of it, but I wasn't really paying attention to like the ins and outs of it. In the end, and the crazy thing is both times I had it was with the same person. He was out for 3 years, and I hung out with him, and he made another one of TMA2.
Did he ever try it?
I don't know if he did. I don't know. He had an obsession with DMT, which I've done that extraction a lot. That's a simple one.
Right.
And then so is also the spearmint with the tryptophan. You can make it that way too. You can make synthetic DMT that way.
Sure, yeah.
Right? You can do that way too.
Yeah.
I didn't do that, but I was part of it. I watched it.
Yeah.
But the mimosa with I think I used phosphoric acid to acidify, cooked it, and then I put it in a long cylindrical tube and added water and a pressure and a compressor and pushed the water through with pressure, and then collected it at the bottom, and then I used that and then basified it and then pulled it out with Napa
Yeah.
and then put it in the freezer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. Well, that's a way to do it. Yeah.
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 But I did it in like things about that big around.
And what about tips for anyone listening to this that finds themselves in your situation, or any final advice?
That's interesting, actually. I thought a lot about that the last few weeks. First of all, I have to say I have to take personal responsibility for the things that I did and the choices I made. I cannot blame other people, not even the people I worked for per se. They didn't make me do this in the end. I could have walked away much earlier. And yeah, there would have been some repercussions, but I can't. I had delusions of grandeur. I think that my arrogance and ego played a big role in my behavior. And if you're ever in this situation, I think take a step back and really look at the people you work with or around or for or whatever you want to call it, and stop, man. Just go back and do it for yourself, and do it for the right reasons and for the chemistry, and the monetary value is not part of it. Like, the monetary is what ruins it. That's, for me, it's what ruins it. Like, that's why I said, like, I gave away. I can't even count how much I gave away. I don't want to count because I'd rather give it away. I don't want monetary value, especially on some of the other psychedelics like DMT. I think that would ruin that one. Like, do the chemistry for the chemistry reason.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, because I've never sold things. Really, it's probably just a privilege more than anything to not have put myself in that position. But anytime I even got anywhere close to that in my teenage years or early 20s, I think a lot of people, when they talk about this, they talk about it almost from like a religious perspective, like it's morally wrong to sell things. I don't think it is. I see nothing morally wrong with selling things or making money or anything like that. But the reality is that as soon as you start selling stuff, you just introduce all of these weirdos into your life.
Right, that want to take advantage of your knowledge.
Yeah. And you then can't control things. And before you know it, you're talking to a friend of a friend of a friend that you don't know. And that's how people get into trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just do it for yourself. If I could go back, I would just do it for myself, enjoy it for the chemistry, and just like learn it and enjoy it. And like, yeah, I think it's amoral. Chemistry is amoral. I think it's all about intention. Whatever your intentions are is when it changes from, a good morally or a bad morally. It's whatever your intentions are. Like, and my intentions weren't good at that time. They were driven by ego and, arrogance and delusions of grandeur. That's the only way I can put it. Did I make some really bad decisions? Yes, I did. And I regret them because of my family and my children, mothers of my children, my brothers. Well, so many people have been affected by my bad choices. So if you're ever in that situation, really think and don't do it. Just do it for yourself.
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah.
Any final notes?
No, I see it.
Well, thank you so much. This was an amazing story.
I'm a bit worn out.
Are you going to go skating later?
Yeah. I'm supposed to go skate with him.
I'm sort of tempted to join you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
For real?
Yeah, I would.
You want to go skate?
I would do it, yeah.
Okay.
I have a skateboard.